Kenmore City Council is now in session. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Sassen,
Present.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Present.
Councilmember Lutsis,
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane answered here, Mayor Herbig,
Here.
and Councilmember Culver has been excused.
Yeah, unless there's any objections, Councilmember Culver will be excused. All right. Next on the agenda, land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Sauksuatl, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First People, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. Now, would you all please stand and join me in the flag salute?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand approved as published. Hearing no objections, the agenda is approved. We have 3 proclamations today. First one is celebrating Affordable Housing Month. Whereas safe, stable, and affordable housing is a fundamental human right and essential for the well-being and prosperity of individuals, families, and communities. And whereas access to affordable housing is crucial for addressing homelessness, reducing poverty, promoting economic opportunity, and foster social inclusion and cohesion. And whereas the availability of affordable housing contributes to the overall health and vitality of our community, supporting workforce development, attracting businesses, and enhancing the quality of life for all residents. And whereas Affordable Housing Month provides an opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of affordable housing, highlight innovative solutions, and engage in dialogue and action to address housing challenges. And whereas the Kenmore City Council recognizes the dedication and efforts of partners, organizations, advocates, policymakers, developers, and community members who work tirelessly to increase access to affordable housing and create equitable housing opportunities for all. And whereas the council reaffirms its commitment to increase and preserve the options for affordable housing as the #1 city council priority in 2024. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Affordable Housing Month throughout the City of Kenmore. Our second proclamation is for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas the rich tapestry of our nation's history is woven with the diverse cultures, traditions, and contributions of its people. And whereas Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders have made invaluable contributions to the cultural, economic, and social fabric of our community, enriching our lives with their heritages and accomplishments. And whereas Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate and honor the achievements, resilience, and cultural diversity of these communities, acknowledging their profound impact on our shared history, despite institutional and systemic injustices that prevent and limit their achievements and contributions. And whereas celebrating this month provides an occasion for education and reflection, fostering greater understanding, appreciation, and inclusion of the experiences and perspectives of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander individuals and communities. And whereas we recognize the importance of ensuring that every member of our community is valued, respected, and empowered to thrive, and whereas the Kenmore City Council continues to commit to promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in our community and beyond. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month throughout the City of Kenmore. The city makes this proclamation to celebrate the AANHPI communities and as an affirmation that Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders make our city stronger and our experiences in Kenmore more enriching. And to accept this today is Christian Kang from Colivent LLC. Did you want to say a few words? Wonderful.
My name is Christian Kang. I grew up here in Kenmore. I'm a current resident of Kenmore as well, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to address the council as well as those in attendance. I have a lot of memories here in Kenmore having grown up here. I remember dreading running the fitness run every Friday at Kenmore Junior, back when it was called Kenmore Junior High. I remember shooting film at Swamp Creek and at St. Edward State Park with my friend Maggie Hubert. That's where I learned how to shoot photography. I remember doing homework and listening to the Beatles, Paul Simon's Graceland, B.B. King live at the Regal, and just soaking it in and wondering if maybe one day I could also become the next great American songwriter. And actually on that note, I'm proud to say that after years of determination and hard work, I'm living my true dream of setting up and managing 401k plans for small and mid-sized businesses. The point I'm trying to make here is that I feel like a true Kenmore local through and through, which feels significant because Kenmore is also where I learned that others saw me as different and treated me differently because of how I looked and because of where my parents came from. And if I'm being honest, it feels strange that I even have to accept such a proclamation. And if I'm being truly honest, I'm a bit tired of always having to represent an entire culture in every interaction that I have, to be conscious of playing into stereotypes or maybe not playing into stereotypes, to be aware of how I'm communicating or how I present myself, when really I just feel like the kid who learned how to bowl at Kenmore Lanes, who played hoops at Arrowhead Elementary with my friends. And that's not to diminish the uniqueness of the cultures that bring vibrancy to our lives, but it is my hope that someday proclamations like these won't have to be made. But until that, albeit rather idealistic vision is fulfilled, I am really proud to live in a city that has leadership that is willing to recognize the AA-NHPI community, as well as the challenges that surrounds that community. I have to admit, there's a part of me that is a bit cynical about all of this. I know that perhaps that is a shared impulse in all of us, especially in this time of contention and skepticism, to maybe call this proclamation a rather superficial gesture. But I do want to confirm and validate this proclamation that even in just the gesture and in the acknowledgement alone, there's healing and there is hope, and that's something that really does matter. So as a proud representative of the AA-NHPI community, as well as a member of the Kenmore Business Alliance, and as a resident of the great city of Kenmore, I'm proud to accept this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to join us up front for so I can get this to you and we're gonna take a quick photo? And last but not least, our third proclamation of the night, Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Month. Whereas pedestrian and bicycle safety continues to be one of the City Council's top priorities, and whereas walking and bicycling are environmentally friendly modes of transportation that improve air quality, reduce traffic congestion, and promote physical activity and overall well-being. And whereas Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Month provides an opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of safe walking and biking practices, educate the public about traffic laws and regulations, and encourage active transportation options. And whereas we recognize the need to invest in infrastructure improvements such as sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, and trails to enhance the safety and accessibility of our streets for pedestrians and bicyclists of all ages and abilities. And whereas the city continues to take great strides in creating a bicycle and pedestrian-friendly community, and whereas all people deserve to be able to get where they are going safely, whether by driving, riding transit, bicycling, or walking. Now therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Month throughout the City of Kenmore. And here to accept that is Kenmore resident Jennifer Anderson LaRue. Would you like to say a few words?
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having me here tonight and for making this proclamation. It is also my hope that in the future, we don't need a proclamation like this, that bicycle and pedestrian safety will just be 100% built into the culture of our society. But the city of Kenmore has been making great strides in making our city a place that we can use alternative transportation to get around, walking, biking, transit. And I just want to say thank you for taking a strong lead on that and standing up to a lot of the criticism that we hear. But we know that we don't build bridges because we see people swimming over rivers. We don't see people swimming over rivers. We build bridges because we need them. We build bike lanes because we need them, and people will use them. And that is true if you have been on Simons lately, or Juanita, or I just had a chance to ride the very newly painted 73rd Avenue bike lane today, and it is amazing. And so I just want to say thank you for all your hard work, and to the city staff for all their hard work for continuing to make these improvements, because when we do that, people will use them. And when people use them, we change our culture, and it becomes more acceptable to bike and to walk, and therefore it becomes safer.
Thank you very much. Would you like to join us for a photo? All right, Mr. City Manager, where is the fun?
Your Honor, we have two things to talk about tonight. On Saturday, the Thoughtful Citizens Group, led by Maura Query, had an Earth Day trash pickup. They started at Tlahwadis Park and went up and down 175th Street and also the Burke-Gilman Trail. And here's what Maura had to say after the event. She says, "Thank you to everyone who came out to celebrate and honor Earth Day with us yesterday. We had 26 people attend and collected 129 pounds of trash from Tlahwadis Park, 175th Street, and the Burke-Gilman Trail. It was a beautiful sunny day until just about the end when the wild wind came through. Everyone commented how pleasantly surprised they were that there was such little litter around. But when we weighed it all, it was a perfect reminder of how at times it may seem that our contribution is small until you see what can be accomplished when we all come together for a common cause. For many, it was their first time at this serene park, and for others, it was their first time attending a trash pickup event. Everyone plans to either be back to the pristine wetland and utilize the kayak launch, and or to start picking up trash more. All around a great day. So heartwarming to spend time with friends, family, and community members to give back to our earth and community." So for the second one, I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie Lukash, our Deputy City Manager.
Well, we had something else fun happen on Saturday. A new business opened in Kenmore called Seatown Suites. We have some pictures of the grand opening, and in fact, there's our very own Mayor Herbig with owner Kayla Hefner. The business is located next to Rite Aid at 6830 Northeast Bothell Way. And they, as you can see from the picture, they sell cakes and cupcakes, cake pops, all of which council members actually have in front of you, a cake pop for your enjoyment tonight. I can vouch for the double chocolate cookie, which I had. That was delicious. Want to invite all of our community to come out to this new business and patronize it, and we're looking forward to enjoying sweet treats for a long time in Kenmore at our newest business.
Thank you. That was, it was fun to see something open like that and take home some cookies for my family. Next on the agenda, we have public comments. We want to welcome folks to the council's meeting. Please address your comments to the mayor and the council. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If there are more than 20 speakers, we'll take that down to 2. The clerk will call your name when it is your turn. The presiding officer may choose to alternate between in-person and online. Folks, please state your name and city of residence and keep within your allotted time. To make every person feel welcome and safe here, please refrain from booing, clapping, heckling, yelling, or other interruptions. The meeting is being recorded for transparency. Thank you for being here and sharing your input respectfully.
All right, my name's Pat O'Brien. I live here.
Mr. O'Brien, hang on.
Oops.
The city attorney has to call you up city clerk has to call you up first. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 guests wishing to speak and no members were registered online. Patrick O'Brien, followed by Karina File and Janet Hayes. Mr. O'Brien.
All right, Pat O'Brien, Kenmore. On your syllabus here, number 8, Affordable Housing Month. I think affordable housing has to start with Kenmore residents first. Absolutely first, before you consider any other type of housing. The people that are going to be displaced at the mobile homes, they have to be accounted for and taken care of before you do anything else. So just a heads up there. And that's the problem we had with Plymouth House. It didn't necessarily deal with people in Kenmore. I'm just trying to help here. The next thing is, it says you got $1.5 million of sound transit money to redo 181st Street. And I talked to our beloved mayor here, and he says that the planning is already possibly 80% finished on that. And none of the neighbors have heard anything about it. No notice, no nothing. And if this goes as well as when they took out the turning lane to go into Inglewood Golf Course, then that could be a problem because there wasn't adequate notification and they eliminated the turn-in lane and the people that lived there weren't very happy. Of course, that all happened late in the process. So the other thing is, I've noticed that we've reduced the speed limit. I don't know if you're in control of that on 522. It's 35 miles an hour. It's a state highway and 35 miles an hour. That seems like crawling to me when it used to be 45. So, not everybody is going to get on their bicycle and pedal up Finn Hill or a lot of places. So you got to keep that in mind. And you've got the road set up very narrow. They're very narrow. And I'm not saying, I'm just saying, be careful. So on the dredging, we see that the Glacier has expanded their request from 400 cubic yards, which is about 40 dump truck loads of material, to 800. And to me, that totally defeats the whole process of an application if you can just suddenly double it. And I'd like to see Mr. Carlinzi insist on testing for dioxins, PCBs, lead, and arsenic. It shouldn't be, oh yeah, we're gonna test. There's a lot of things you can test for, and that has to be specified by the city. Also, I submitted comments for the determination of non-significance to the city, and Janet Hayes and some city council people have that. It was never recorded. I was never put on the list of people that put in a comment for the issuance of non-significance, rejecting that and asking for the testing. I would like somebody to do some testing and see where my emails went when I submitted that. So there's always more.
Thank you.
But
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Karina File.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Herbeck. Tonight, we have important issues that you're hearing about from our law and justice partners of the city of Kenmore that serve our community and the city. On December 11th, the City Council adopted the local break fix that gave a certain amount of activation to address issues, yet left a loophole, a gap in a process that could be better engaged should direction of the council be made and issued to our city manager in the process. And that would be to really enlist that process of law and justice reform through ensuring that we are engaging the diversion and restorative justice practices at the start. Now that these cases are going to be coming in at that local level and then possibly into our community courts, we have to hope that our prosecuting attorney has the time to be able to engage the public if they're coming in at that level. At the local level, people often do not have representation. They may not be able to afford that, so due to social inequities, cost of living issues, the drivers of crime, our joblessness, homelessness, desperation, and addiction. I do call upon this council to take action and engage a firm directive so that we can close that injustice gap and enlist restorative justice that's evidence-based and proven to work, is cost-effective, improves outcomes for our community, and reduces homelessness of families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Janet Hayes.
Hi, my name is Janet Hayes, and I'm a resident of Kenmore. It's been a long time since I stood here. When the city of Kenmore, this is my comment. When the city of Kenmore files a notice of application for determination of non-significance, the city provides environmental documents to whomever asks. The problem is they are incomplete. Their inventory is incorrect. The landfill that is Lake Point, which began as a peat bog under the water, is stated as a landfill from 1957 to 1965. Yes, it did operate as WashDOT's garbage can for those years. Construction and demolition debris from I-5 being built. What is missing is the inventory that is, what is missing is the inventory Pioneer Towing continued operation from 1967 to 1981 as a private landfill. Bayside Disposal did use and have lease or whatever partnership with Pioneer Towing. It was their garbage can. Why I continue asking for testing, and that's testing of the birthing channel, is everything goes into it from that land. No testing has been done since 2012. And that testing was taken, the testing results were taken from testing. This is the testing that was mandated in the consent decree. I'm almost done, I'm glad. Anyway, it is unlined, that landfill is unlined and continues with weight when that's on anything can leak out of that and into the birthing channel, into the Sammamish Slough, and into Lake Washington. So I suggest testing once again. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes our speakers list.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda stands approved. We're going to scoot down to the study session tables, and we will restart in just a second. All right, first item on the study session agenda is King County District Court presented by Chief Presiding Judge Rebecca Robertson, Judge Karama Hawkins, and Judge Raul Martinez.
And before we get started, I just want to introduce the public safety study session. This is becoming an annual tradition here at Kenmore City Hall, and we're delighted to have all of our partners, both in the public safety and justice branch, judicial branch realm, and thrilled with the collaboration that we have. We have terrific partners, and you'll hear from them tonight. And I'm just really thrilled that we work so closely together and that so many of them are here in person, and just really appreciate year-round their service and support to Kenmore and its residents. So I'm going to let Garrett Oppenheim, who I want to thank because he was instrumental in pulling this session together, did a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you, Garrett. Garrett's going to review the list of everyone who's here with us tonight. Some are in person and some are virtual. So Garrett, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So yes, tonight we're pleased to be able to welcome from the King County District Court, Chief Presiding Judge Rebecca Robertson, and then Judges Karama Hawkins and Raul Martinez. We have our prosecutor, Sarah Roberts, Public Defender, Jeff McNichols, the Executive Director of the Regional Crisis Response Agency, known as RACER, Brooke Bittner. From Connections Health Services, we have the Vice President of Implementation, Sarah Lopez, and our own Kenmore Chief of Police, Brendan Moen. So I'll hand it over to Judges Hawkins and Martinez.
Don't turn off my mic. So I just want to thank you for inviting us to participate in this session. It was such a wonderful way to connect with the community that we serve. And it's really great to be back. And we're really excited to discuss and share with the community and you council members on some of the things that not only King County District Court does to serve your community, but some of the things that we're working on to improve the services that we can offer and provide. So I think that Judge Martinez will go ahead and start with our presentation. It's kind of two layers. We're going to talk about where the judicial system fits into our system of government, and then I'll talk more about some of the logistical things that we do and what we actually do for the city of Kenmore. Judge Martinez.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. Alongside me, we also have our King County District Court Chief Presiding Judge, Rebecca Robertson. Back behind you folks, we have some of our fantastic, we have a director and we have two courthouse managers, the folks that make it all happen. So I'd like to acknowledge them. Judge Hawkins and I are going to be giving you an overview of King County District Court and how Kenmore fits into that picture. Before we dive into the details of King County District Court, we want to step back and see the big picture by quickly illustrating the three branches of government and what powers they have at the federal, state, and local level. I know this may seem a little remedial, but these slides will go quickly. In general, the legislative branch makes and changes laws. The executive branch puts those laws into action, and the judicial branch renders judgments on those laws. Here's what that looks like currently at the federal level, at the state level, and at the county level. You'll note that there are two judges depicted at the top, and that's because King County has two courts, Superior Court and King County District Court. We're here representing King County District Court. And here are your local branches of government. Our district court serves as Kenmore's judicial branch, with Judge Hawkins and I presiding over Kenmore cases. Of course, you recognize yourselves as the legislative branch, and Mr. Carlinci and Ms. Lukash lead the executive branch. Although both Judge Hawkins and I handle Kenmore cases, our primary responsibilities do vary a little bit. I preside over Kenmore criminal cases, Kenmore shoreline civil infractions. I do the small claims cases, protection orders, and name changes. Judge Hawkins presides over shoreline Kenmore's community court. She hears shoreline criminal cases, Kenmore conflict criminal cases, shoreline Kenmore infraction cases. Okay, now I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail about the organizational structure and substance of our King County District Court. Our King County District Court mission statement is to serve the public by providing an accessible forum for the fair, efficient, and understandable resolution of civil and criminal cases, and maintaining an atmosphere of respect for the dignity of all individuals. It's a little bit of a mouthful, and I think in my head, it's kind of summarized in a nutshell as our job is to provide access to justice. And we take that very seriously, and it's a privilege and an honor to be able to do that for Kenmore. Independent judges play a crucial role in any functioning democracy, and we take that very seriously in our court. Judicial independence comes in two forms. There's institutional independence, which is the separation of the branches of government, and there's decisional independence, which is the ability of a judge to render decisions free from influence, to render those decisions based solely on the individual facts applied to the law. King County District Court is made up of 25 judges, and those judges are all elected through 5 electoral districts. The districts are the West, Southeast, Southwest, Northeast, and Shoreline districts. Kenmore is located in the Shoreline District, which you can see in the upper left-hand corner. King County District Court's leadership structure is divided into 3 divisions: the West, the South, and the East. Here you can see what division each courthouse is in. And because Kenmore's cases are handled at the Shoreline District Court, it's represented in the West Division. Because we handle cases countywide, we have 9 courthouses ranging from Shoreline in the north, Auburn in the south, Vashon to the west, and Issaquah to the east in the Cascade Foothills. We also contract with 13 cities in addition to handling all of unincorporated King County civil and criminal cases. Our district court judicial leadership is comprised of an executive committee, which consists of our chief presiding judge, assistant chief presiding judge, and the 3 division presiding judges. I can't say enough about these colleagues. They've stepped up to lead the way and provide direction on administrative matters, and they do so without any additional compensation and often in addition to their workloads. Some courthouses do things different, or do different things, I should say. For example, the Issaquah Courthouse, to my knowledge, I believe handles just civil cases. At the Shoreline Courthouse, we do everything. And that includes both civil and criminal cases for the cities of Kenmore and Shoreline. If we zoom in a bit, you can see that civil and criminal matters include simple and gross misdemeanors for the criminal cases, anti-harassment, stalking, domestic violence, sexual assault, extreme risk, and temporary protection orders. We participate in community court, traffic, non-traffic, and parking infractions, small claims cases, name changes, and vehicle impound hearings. And if we zoom in a little bit closer, I can tell you that the criminal cases routinely involve domestic violence in all its various criminal forms, assault, DUIs, thefts, and property crimes, to name a few. Small claims cases routinely involve landlord-tenant issues, business contracts, contractor issues, lemon law cases, and increasingly e-commerce issues. In a couple of minutes, Judge Hawkins is going to show you a detailed breakdown of the court's caseload. Spoiler alert, you're going to see that from a strictly numbers perspective, most of our cases are parking and infraction related. However, those statistics can be misleading. The reality is that most of our judicial time is spent on criminal cases, and this slide illustrates why. Infractions generally take one hearing. In contrast, criminal cases can take judicial time for more than 5 years and involve multiple hearings. The initial hearing, when somebody's in custody and recently arrested, is what's called a first appearance or probable cause hearing, generally followed by an arraignment, pretrial conference, perhaps a plea hearing, then a sentencing or a trial. And then after a person is sentenced, there can be a multitude of probationary review hearings if somebody is alleged to have violated the conditions of their probation. The other reason that criminal cases tend to take longer is that by definition, they're more serious. They often involve public safety issues. There can be a victim, and criminal matters also affect liberty interests. They also affect the constitutional rights, and it's our job as the court to make sure that those constitutional rights of every defendant are protected zealously in our courtrooms. Additional services that we provide, I've already talked a little bit about the post-sentencing phase. That's essentially judge supervised probation. And our job there is to ensure that any conditions of sentence, which often include a requirement for mental health and substance abuse evaluations and treatment. Some of the other conditions are not to commit criminal law violations. We basically make sure that those conditions are either followed or the suspended sentences imposed if they're not followed. We also have community court. We provide interpreters, and that might seem like a no-brainer when it comes to a criminal case, but we also take that really seriously in civil cases too, because it's an access to justice issue. We believe that folks that whose first language is not English ought to be able to come to court and understand and be understood in a name change hearing, in a small claims case, in a petition hearing for a civil protection order. And so we do provide that those interpreters. We also handle US passport applications. All right, before I wrap up, I want to briefly circle back to criminal cases to note that one of our primary objectives is to reduce recidivism. We have various tools to try to accomplish this. Punishment as a deterrent comes in the form of jail time and electronic home monitoring. And that's what a lot of people think about when they think about our criminal justice system. But where it appears that chemical dependency, mental health issues, and or perhaps a lack of education may be the root cause of a crime, we have other tools at our disposal. And those can be something as simple as requiring a defendant to engage in evaluation and treatment for alcohol, drug, mental health, domestic violence, anger management, or sexual deviancy. So again, our goal is to use all our tools to mitigate against new criminal law violations. All right, I'm going to end on funding. It's pretty basic. Two primary sources are the King County General Fund and then also city contracts. We do have therapeutic courts, and those are funded by the mid tax as well as various levies. Okay, at this point, Judge Hawkins is going to address caseloads in community court with you. Thank you again for having us.
Are there any questions that anybody has before I get into the nuts and bolts of things?
Councilor Marshall?
Thanks. Is there no longer a separate probation department? Or is there still? Because I saw Judge reviewed or judge-led probation?
We do have probation, and so it's basically whether or not the judge orders active probation, and we can get into that a little bit. Technically, we have two different types of monitoring post-conviction. We have compliance monitoring where really we're just looking to make sure that the individual has law-abiding behavior for whatever period of time. The other is active supervision, and that's where they actually go in, talk to a probation officer on a regular basis. And that probation officer is there for two reasons generally: to ensure that the individual who is on probation has access to the resources that they need to be compliant and successful in their sentence. And to let the court know when that person is either not doing something that they're supposed to do or that they have done something that they're not supposed to do. Then they come see me and they don't want that. Any other questions?
You want to turn on the mic, sorry.
Judge supervised probation. We call it that because it's very different from the Department of Corrections. If you're in Superior Court and you get sentenced on a felony, Department of Corrections takes care of everything after that. You don't see a judge again. Here, you have to come back and go back before the judge if you're violating any of your conditions.
Mhm. And probation on this level of court is essentially an extension of the court. You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, fantastic. So we didn't talk about the caseload. We do have caseload numbers for last year. And I believe that these numbers actually represent all of King County District Court. So what you'll notice is that court-wide or county-wide on the district court level, we had a lull, obviously, a reduction of the case loads after COVID hit. There was a reduction in filings. Prosecuting attorney offices were looking to just file cases that were more severe in nature or that presented a risk to the public safety or to a particular individual. Lower level types of cases, maybe driving without a license, something of that nature, are things that there was a deferral of actually filing and going forward. So over time, we've seen an increase in the caseloads because of that, that freeze on filing non-serious offenses being lifted. The same is true for Kenmore, and you will see that what you'll notice is the last number, 5,332 parking and photo enforcement cases. So that has had a significant impact on generally the caseloads in for the city of Kenmore. Those are those lovely traffic camera tickets that I'm sure everybody loves and you've never heard any complaints about. So those are things that we have taken on to address, and we hear those on a regular basis, and that accounts for a lot of what you're seeing in terms of the increase in those numbers. Here we have a breakout of the 5-year case history without photo enforcement, which I think just started last year. And here are the numbers through 2023. So that explains kind of the increase in the numbers that you're seeing. One of the crown jewels of King County District Court is our community court program. And we are really lucky to have community court here for the cities of Shoreline and Kenmore. Kenmore joined our community court program last year, and we have had a graduate. We have had an increase in participants from the city of Kenmore. You can see that we had 5 continuing participants as of December of 2023. And actually that number I think is a little bit higher right now. In addition, we have a resource center that is open not just to community court participants, but to the communities that we serve. anybody who needs help can go to King County District Court Resource Centers, whether it be at our Shoreline location or at our Redmond location or at our Auburn location. And you don't need to go in person. We have the ability to allow people to call in over Zoom and get connected to the resources and the help that they need. So I'll let everybody know if anybody that you know might need some help getting insurance, getting connected with job resources, any number of things. The Resource Center is definitely a resource that's available to everybody. So I hope that you all share it. You'll also notice that we have had 642 Resource Center visits. And again, that includes people from all over the place, not just from Kenmore or Shoreline, and a total of 916 total volunteer hours of the people who give their time to make the Resource Center the jewel that it is. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge very important volunteers that are there with us every single Tuesday afternoon at 1:30 that make sure everything is up and running. Mike D, who is actually he helps with all of King County District Court community courts. He goes Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to every court that we have. So he is absolutely phenomenal, and we could not, especially with the technical stuff, do what we do without his help. Heidi Shepherd, which I believe everybody is familiar with. She is with Lake City Partners and other organizations, and she has been phenomenal. She is one of our navigators. Also, Pete Gerard is one of our navigators, and Donna Hockley. These three individuals have been there since way before I got to sit on the bench and preside over our community court. And again, without them, we couldn't do the wonderful things that we do to change the lives of our participants. So I want to give a big shout out to them. There are a number of things that we're looking to implement and incorporate in our community court program. We have, first of all, have already started with having peer recovery navigators join and be there with us every week. A peer recovery navigator is an individual who has been where our participants are at. And they have been able to address their underlying issues, get through their cases, and be in a position to actually help lead people through the system. If you, I mean, just think about that for a moment. An individual who has been at the absolute lowest place that you can imagine, being now in a position where they can help guide others out of that hole that they're in. It is just phenomenal work. Aaron Coito is the individual that's there with us most of the time. He does have people that he's training and he brings them to our court every single week, but it has made such a difference in the lives of our participants to have that kind of connection with someone who has been through the system and come out on the other side better. So having them be a part of our community court has been phenomenal. We have 3 treatment providers every single week that come to, in some cases, screen people and even complete SUD evaluations day of. That can't always happen. To schedule mental health evaluations to see if any treatment is necessary, and even for co-occurring disorders. The folks that are typically with us are Sound Integrated Health, Rainier Recovery, and Center for Human Services. Phenomenal individuals, and they commit themselves every week without a promise of having clients referred to them in order to make sure that we have access to the help that our participants need. This is the kind of commitment that you're getting from our partners in the Resource Center. We now offer clothing to people who need it and who ask for it. You probably won't be surprised that there are individuals that don't have access to clean or wearable clothing. And they're able to come to our courthouse, ask for sweatpants, ask for a shirt, ask for socks, and it's provided to them. One of the things I am so excited about, and I'm so excited to share this with you, is that we are working as we speak on creating a life skills program. We want to start off with our community court participants. That seems to be the populations that's in the most need, right? If you can imagine individuals who are dealing with housing insecurity, overcoming or dealing with active mental health or substance use disorder, needing the tools to be able to handle getting to court every week, making sure that they make the phone calls that they need to make in order to get the help that they need, returning phone calls from their attorneys, maybe from their treatment providers, from their navigators, from their peer mentors, and other skills to help them really better their position and give them some foundation. So I am absolutely over the moon about this. And it would be, I don't anticipate that it would be any cost, out-of-pocket cost to us, other than maybe some man hours of clerks. We're still kind of working on the logistics of that. But this has just been an absolutely phenomenal opportunity. And I'm so excited to come back and tell you guys that it is up and running and how well people are doing. Super exciting. Community engagement. Now, this has been another thing that just generally our court has been working on, just reaching out to the communities that we serve. The courthouse is not an ivory tower. It's not a place where, certainly not, it's not a place where you should only go or know, you know where it is, you pass by it, it's your court. This is the people's court. It is where individuals can walk in and get help with any number of types of remedies for any number of situations. So it's not just about coming here when you're in trouble. We also actually provide really important services to the communities that we serve. Judge Martinez actually touched on a number of them: passports, protection orders, name changes. How awesome is it as a judge to sit on the bench and be able to help an individual change their name to match with who they are? How wonderful is it as a judge, even though it's difficult, to offer protection to somebody that's scared and needs help? So these are all things that this court is here to serve this community for. Now, in terms of the engagement that we did last year, we did probably more community engagement that we have in many years past. Pause and Pride, I believe that's out of Bellevue. Redmond Derby Days, I participated in that one, as well as Emoji Fest in Seattle. All really awesome events. And of course, the Celebrate Shoreline. It is my hope that we can add a Kenmore event or two for next year, because we are really working on making sure that we are connected to this community. I think there was one event that I came to, but we didn't sign up for it in time to actually have a booth like we would at other events. So I have my eyes open for that this year. I do want to just acknowledge in the back of the room, and Judge Martinez gave him a shout out, but I want to tell you that these individuals are really the backbone of the court. Marina Konstantinova, she is our court manager. She is the fashion plate of King County District Court. Nobody dresses better than her now, in the past, nor will they ever. She is phenomenal. We have Yana Philippidis, who is present, and she is our court director, and she deals with courts that have contracts. And so anytime there's an issue or something that we need to discuss on that leadership level, Yana is the one that I reach out to. And of course, I cannot forget the phenomenal Whitney Eishen. She is our court coordinator, and this trifecta of awesomeness gives you, the city of Kenmore, the absolute best court that we could possibly offer, and we are working on making it better and better every single day. So I want to acknowledge you. Thank you for all that you do. And that is it for me. I want to thank you, City of Kenmore, for your partnership. I have to tell you, working with Ms. Lukash and Mr. Oppenheim has been an absolute pleasure. We are lucky to have these individuals with us. I tell you, there are few people more excited or more gung-ho to make, you know, this relationship and this partnership the best that it absolutely can be for the citizens of the city of Kenmore. So I thank you both for your partnership, for your leadership, and I look forward to continuing to work with you over the years to come. So thank you. Judge Robertson, I want to thank you too. She trusted me with speaking to you all today. So, you know, thank you for that. And Judge Robertson's been phenomenal too, a true leader in every sense of the word. And this relationship that we have here in our partnership between the court and the city of Kenmore is only stronger because of it. So thank you, fearless leader. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions? Councilor Lutz.
Of course, thank you so much. This is awesome to hear, and it makes me very proud that we're a part of this. I think there's a lot of great work going on, so thank you to everyone who's made that possible from our judicial partners, so thank you. I did have a few questions. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor? The first one, you said that with the COVID freeze, and please feel free, let me know if you don't have that information. Potentially our wonderful deputy city manager might have this information too. But with the COVID freeze, I believe you said that the number of cases that were put forward declined because they weren't putting forward as many. And I was curious, is there any sort of catch up that's going on in the court system right now? Any sort of backlog or anything like that? Or is everything running smoothly?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're dealing with a backlog now, but actually I think that we're really working on making sure that we catch up with the backlog, particularly in cases like small claims. The court has done a lot of work to ensure that we are moving cases forward, giving people their day in court, and giving them the opportunity to be heard. The prosecuting attorney's office is continuing to work on filing cases, you know, and I don't mean to say that the only holdup in some of the backlog is because of COVID and us coming out of that. There are other issues that are outside of the court's ability to do anything about. For instance, with driving under the influence cases where there are blood draws, that is outside of our purview. We have to wait until we get blood results back from Washington State Patrol. There's a backlog there, and so I'm noticing that more of those cases are coming forward now, and they're being filed now that we have those numbers, or the prosecuting attorney, I should say, has those numbers. So those are just a couple of reasons, but yes, in certain areas, we're dealing with backlog, and I think for the most part, we're caught up on most of it, right?
We caught up in general in March of 2023. So we have been, King County District Court operated the entire time. We were hybrid court most of the time. We did jury trials when we could. There were a couple pauses. So we managed to get through that backlog. Some of the small claims, we have a backlog in having trial dates, and we're working through that and working to, but for the most part, we have worked through everything that we have received. Now, the various prosecuting attorney's office may be slowly filing more cases so that it's not all dumped on us at once, which we appreciate. But we have mostly caught up.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. That's very good to hear.
I think what we're also seeing is an uptick in case filings too. It's not just a matter of catching up. I know with small claims cases, there's just more people filing cases. I think as people come out of that COVID phase, that hibernation phase, there's more activity certainly in our courts too.
You. Another question I had is I noticed, and maybe you don't have all of the answers to this one, but when it came to the statistics for Kenmore and the 5-year case history, it shows that essentially the cases from Kenmore dropped during COVID, but haven't moved back up as has the rest of the county. Is there any sort of insight as to why that might be from your perspective at all? Is that just not as many cases coming forward, or you have any insight on that?
I personally don't. I think that Ms. Roberts, who is the prosecuting attorney, would be a great person to ask that question to. I believe that she will be here to talk to you all later. And so I think that would be a great question for her.
Of course, thank you.
Of course.
And then I think the last one, I'm very interested to hear a little bit more about Community Court. I think that's a fantastic program and everything. And so, I think this is such a cool program that the city's a part of, and thank you for all that you've done to help support that, facilitate that. And so how does that look? I know that we saw that the number of graduates and everything, and I'm curious, how does that compare with the number of folks who go in? And then with those folks, are they, with the resources that they're provided, has that shown to be effective in terms of preventing recidivism or any other sort of issues that might come along? I'm a little bit curious to hear about the success of it.
Yes, so it's really new for the city of Kenmore. So I don't know that we have a whole lot of data for Kenmore yet, but I think generally speaking, I can tell you, and I don't know how much you know about the community court program in general, but just as a brief overview, the goal is to interrupt a pattern of criminal behavior by giving a person an opportunity to get connected to essential resources, to stop patterns, and to let them go once they are connected to those resources, in the hopes that they follow up, that they're focused on doing the things that they need to do to get stable, to get clean, to get help with mental health, to get housing, and to let them go live their lives and let the case be done with. So that's really our goal: connect people to services, get them help, get them compliant, and let them go. Generally speaking, in the year that I have been here, we have had, I think, I want to say 5 revocations, so people that didn't make it through the program. And I think there's 1 person that's come back with a new case, which is pretty good considering the rates. Now, this is just off the top of my head, what I was looking at earlier. So I think it can be successful. People don't want to come back and see that they've disappointed me. They don't want to come back and with all of the help that they've gotten and all the connections that they've made, be in a place where they have to say, well, I'm here again. So once graduation happens, we're not seeing as many people back in the system. I am certain of that. I will tell you that there are people who are engaged in community court that will pick up new cases while they're still participants, and we deal with that on a case-by-case basis. For certain individuals, it may make sense for them to stay in the program longer, to add or modify the conditions of their agreement to be in community court. And so we really do try to work on a case-by-case basis, meeting people where they're at. And it's my hope that next year we'll have more information specific to this data that you're asking about. So stay tuned.
course, no, thank you so much. That's very exciting to hear. And of
Mhm.
course, I didn't expect any, graphs or anything like that, just a general sense of the direction that you're seeing this going, since it is so fresh, so exciting
Yeah.
and so wonderful that we're a part of.
Well, thank you for those questions. I really appreciate it. And I will note, I've seen Mr. Oppenheim and Ms. Lukash at our community court calendars on Zoom and in person a couple of times as well. And I invite you all to log in and check it out. I would love to see and hear from you what your perspective is, what you think about the program, answer questions that you might have about what you see. So I invite you to participate. I will also note that one of the changes I've made is that I think it's the second Tuesday of every month, is that every second Tuesday of the month, we have graduation. And so we're trying to make that a more consistent days, that a person can look forward to that date. So we're kind of working on making that more, exciting, and you may get invitations if we know we're going to have graduates. So
And they really do enjoy having folks.
they do.
During the last 4 years, of course, we were focusing on survival, not statistics across the
Right.
country. So there's no recent data, but
Mhm.
data from 2019 from the Spokane
That's
Community Court indicates that there's at least a 15% drop in recidivism higher out of our regional mental health court and veterans court. So these models are successful.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. That's very exciting to hear. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Councilmember Sassen.
Two things, a question and a comment. One, I'm very excited about all of this, but right now the enhancements have caught my attention. And I'm curious if the peer recovery navigators are compensated or are volunteers.
They're volunteers.
I would love to see us find some way
Yeah.
to compensate them for their service. Just putting that out there as a pie in the
They're
sky.
phenomenal.
And then the other thing I want to share is that I hear that the priority is in stopping patterns, to stop patterns. But my own experience as a young child appearing before a court, my mother and I were victims of domestic violence, and to sit in front of a judge as a young child and be believed, and then to sit a second time as I was changing my name to match that of my adopted father rather than my previous father, to be believed, that is behavior prevention. And I just want to applaud you, not just for stopping behaviors, but for offering compassion and a brighter future for the families that you care for. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember
Thank you for
Marshall.
sharing that, by the way.
Councilmember Marshall.
I just got to tell my colleagues, I cannot believe the 3 treatment providers at court. I don't think anybody else offers that. I haven't been in municipal courts for like about 2 years now since I've been doing ITA, but I don't know if any of the court offers that. And if that's the case, that's huge, because your honors have had preside over many review hearings where the deal is, yeah, the car broke down, something happened with the family. I could not make it to my appointment. I could not get the process started, but now you have them there. It's huge. It's awesome.
They're present in all 3 of our community courts. We do have them set up so that there's the resource center right there and the treatment providers who are right there. Right, if you have them right there, it eliminates all of those excuses and people.
All right, well, I just have one question. So, as was mentioned during public comment, we did in December adopt a Blake fix and fold that into our municipal code. And I'm just I'd like to hear from your perspective, like how that works when somebody is, picked up for public use or cited for public use and they come before the court. Can you talk a little bit about how that works and Yeah, I don't know enough to ask a good question here. Could you talk a little bit about how that works for somebody who's struggling with addiction and comes to court for a public use charge?
Well, I don't know how much I can actually say about that. I mean, are you asking specifically about how that works once they get to, once a case is filed?
Yeah, I'm just curious what happens to folks because, my concern and, I voted for the fix, but my concern, is around, essentially criminalizing addiction. I think is something that, I'm conflicted about personally. And so I was just curious, like what sort of diversions are available? What sort of options are available for somebody who's struggling with addiction? And isn't able to, hide their addiction in their home, but maybe the only place they have to, struggle with their addiction is in public, which is unfortunate. So, what sort of things are offered to somebody rather than just punitive measures, I guess?
Well, it sounds like you're asking about law enforcement, assisted diversion, maybe. We don't have a particular program set up for that yet. I know that there is a lot of discussion about how logistically that would work. I think that
That's already in place down in South King County, right?
What's that?
LEAD is already up and running down in South King County.
Right. And there's the LEAD program that's actually connected with criminal cases, but it's not necessarily that they're diverted or not referred for criminal cases. It's a program that connects people to help. It's very intensive program as well. So there can be and has been, a discussion about how that is going to logistically work if, with respect to the prosecuting attorney's authority, how logistically that's going to work in terms of tracking how things happen once a person is connected. So I think that's a continuing discussion that's going on in our court on how we would implement that and make it work. I can tell you once a case like that gets into the system, we have to treat every case on an individual level. There are different ways that we can emphasize treatment over just putting somebody in jail. There are different ways to perhaps resolve cases. We have different types of diversion. We have deferred sentences. We have stipulated order of continuances, which are essentially contracts between the prosecuting authority and the individual. So they have the ability to earn a dismissal of a criminal charge if it's associated with use or possession, which, because of the Blake case, are not things that have been necessarily filed a whole lot, at least in King County, in our particular court. But that may change with the legislative fix after Blake. So there are ways, and we do look to not just throw people in jail because, they were using on the street. It really goes to the philosophy of trying to stop the behavior, to interrupt the pattern, and to get people the help that they need to fix their lives. That's really what we want. If we didn't have a job having to deal with these issues, we'd have a lot less work to do. We're just going to continue to do our part to try to chip away at those issues. But law enforcement assisted diversion is something that many of us are absolutely looking at as a future option. Judge Robertson, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Because we're such a large court with so many municipalities, their solutions may be different, and the state's not filing these at all. So we don't see them in state courts. But there is, as Judge Hawkins indicated, a real push to understand what the legislator is wanting and say, 3 arrests and you get diverted, 3 arrests and you get to, it gets filed in court. Well, who tracks that? We're in the position that we only get what is filed. So we would have no idea what the police are doing with their diversions, or maybe they are a diversion with the city or the state before we see them at all.
Right.
But once they do get into court, they're going to get a public defender. All of our judges understand what the issues are, and these would be a perfect, kind of the perfect case for community courts so that we can stop the behavior and get them into treatment. Even if they aren't in a community court, all of the judges have learned from the community court experience and can understand that this is going to be a therapeutic environment for this particular person if need be. And sometimes it doesn't work and they go to jail, but that's kind of the philosophy that we're working with.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And there are some people who, like they might have been perfect for community court, but for some other case that they have on their record that makes them ineligible. So we have the ability to kind of structure a sentence if it comes to that, to mirror what we might be doing in a community court or therapeutic court setting. So we have that discretion and authority to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions for this panel? Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening and coming down and presenting to us. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate the partnership that we have with.
Thank you for having us. It is our honor, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a prosecutorial services update presented by Prosecutor Sarah Roberts. Shrabanam, were you going to introduce her?
Good evening. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so sorry that I was not able to join you in person, but I certainly appreciate the opportunity to join you virtually. Nice to see some of you again, and nice to see some new faces on the council as well. My name is Sarah Roberts, and I serve as your Kenmore prosecuting attorney. I have been with the city of Kenmore for a little over 14 years now, in addition to serving as Kenmore prosecutor. I also serve as the Lake Forest Park prosecutor and the city of Shoreline prosecutor as well. I have about 32 years now of prosecution experience. I started my career at the King County Prosecutor's Office, and 22 years ago, I left and began municipal prosecution. And like I said, I've been with you for approximately 14 years now. I'd like to start with this first slide, indicating that the primary duty of the prosecutor is to seek justice within the bounds of the law, not merely to convict. I start with that because I think that oftentimes people have a misconception that prosecutors are all about sending people to jail and throwing away the key and coming down hard. And that's just not the truth necessarily. There certainly are individuals that do need to go to jail, but we really are lucky in a municipal court to be able to focus on restorative justice and treatment options as opposed to jail or any type of incarceration. I don't know that I have the ability. Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, I don't know that I have the ability to change the slide. So thank you for doing that. So what does your prosecution team do? Actually, before I get there, I want to say, in addition to myself, I have two full-time attorneys that work with me, and a paralegal and a domestic violence advocate. So, prosecution team, we prosecute all misdemeanors and gross misdemeanor crimes that occur within the city of Kenmore. So, a misdemeanor crime is a crime that's punishable by a maximum sentence of 90 days in jail, and a gross misdemeanor crime is one that is punishable by a maximum of 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. In other words, we don't prosecute any felony cases. We don't prosecute murder cases, rape cases, serious assault cases. Those are all handled by the King County Prosecutor's Office. So we solely focus on the misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors that occur within the city limits. In addition to prosecution, we advise the law enforcement, police officers, legal updates, criminal procedure matters. I'm available to our police officers 24/7 for phone calls, advice, questions that they have when they're out on the road. If they, aren't certain whether a crime's been committed or what they need to do, they're welcome to certainly call me at that time, and I give them updates and advice on the scene. We stay apprised of all the changes in the law affecting criminal prosecution and train our officers on those changes as well. And we meet with city and court personnel on various topics. Next slide. Process of prosecuting a crime. So how do things get started? Things get started with communication with the police. So police officer may be out on the road. They take a case report. They send me that case report. I review the police report and evaluate that report for a filing decision. I determine whether in fact a crime has been committed, whether there's probable cause to go ahead and file charges. I evaluate the evidence and think, are we able to get a conviction here if we were to go ahead and prosecute? Additionally, we obtain all the physical evidence that includes, 911 tapes, videos, now body cam videos, Department of Licensing records, photos. Oftentimes, we may need additional witness statements. I shouldn't say oftentimes, sometimes we'll need additional witness statements, or I'll have questions for the officer. So we'll reach back out to the police officers and ask them to follow up and sometimes obtain additional evidence for us. Once we've determined that a crime has been committed and that it is appropriate to go forward with criminal charges, we draft the necessary documentation that's needed to go to court. That includes complaints, witness lists, the no contact orders to surrender firearms, bail recommendations. We go ahead and file those documents into the court system, and that's pretty much how things get started there. We then conduct interviews with our witnesses and our victims, let them know what is going on with the case, let them know the status of the case. If the case looks like it's heading for trial, we'll discuss and prepare testimony with those witnesses, and whether they be civilian witnesses or police officers. We, again, I think I already mentioned, we keep the victims apprised of the case status. We then represent the city at all of the criminal court hearings. We meet with the public defense, discuss what we consider to be offers, sometimes known as plea bargain offers, and do what we can to attempt to resolve the case by making those offers. We look into restitution, research restitution, whether that be restitution that might be owed to the city of Kenmore or to a private individual. Obtain documentation on that and have that information ready to provide to the court if the case does resolve in a conviction or some sort of other resolution. Draft legal briefing, motions, and prepare oral argument to the court. Provide sentencing recommendations, post-conviction orders, if applicable, And again, obtain victim impact statements from the victims who are willing to provide that information to our officers or to our office. And then we can go ahead and file that with the court when that's appropriate. Finally, well, not finally, but we also prepare probation revocation recommendations in the event that an individual is on probation with the court and they're in violation of that probation, and we need to make a recommendation to the court. Restorative justice, you've heard that term tonight, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about that. And this kind of goes back to the first slide that I was talking about, where seeking justice is the goal of the prosecution. So, and all of the cases that we deal with, our goal is to reduce recidivism, as the judges had discussed previously, trying to stop this from happening again, trying to step in and see what we can do. So we address the cases to look for underlying issues that may have contributed to the individual's participation in the criminal justice system. So we look for issues that might include mental health, domestic violence, substance use, anger management, poverty and economic challenges. These are things that we certainly address in community court, but even if an individual isn't appropriate for community court, those are still things that we want to look for and address in any of our cases, whether it be a community court case or what we call a mainstream court case, one that stays in mainstream court. Current court procedures, virtual hearings over Zoom are allowed to some extent. The court has been very open to that, and I'm very appreciative of that. It's certainly, we've certainly seen a decrease in, it says FTAs, sorry, that stands for failures to appear, individuals not coming to court. So the access for Zoom hearings in some circumstances have certainly helped us keep our defendants appearing for court. And it also helps avoid warrants and jail bookings for people that would otherwise be arrested on warrants. Increases the access to justice, excuse me. And not only for the defendants, but also for our victims and witnesses as well. We oftentimes have victims who want to address the court regarding, say, a no contact order or a sentencing matter, and are able to appear virtually. Court procedures, some of the more recent court procedures of the last couple of years, we've had, we're all paperless now. We have an e-filing system, so our office spends a great deal of time filing cases through e-court, but we also really appreciate having access to those court documents as well. Our in-custody hearings are conducted remotely over video court. We're not doing any transports. That certainly saves the police department time and resources when they could otherwise be on the road and serving the citizens. So we appreciate the court for allowing us to the opportunity to utilize video court for our in-custody hearings as well. Domestic violence cases. The bulk of the cases that we seem to be dealing with, at least, the ones that take the majority of our time, are both DUI cases and domestic violence cases. In domestic violence cases, if the officers are able to find the perpetrator, in other words, if the perpetrator is at the scene when the officers arrive, or they're able to locate the perpetrator. This results in a mandatory arrest and jail booking of that individual. They're automatically arrested under the law once the officers have determined that there's probable cause for arrest. Then once I receive the case, again, the next morning, we're dealing with these things really quickly. Once I determine whether there's probable cause to move forward and go ahead and file charges, we generally file charges immediately within just a few hours after receiving the police reports. We also request no contact orders. Sometimes we don't request a no contact order at that first criminal appearance. Usually we go ahead and request a no contact order, and we can address that as the case proceeds. We let the alleged victim know that we're going to go ahead and request that, and that he or she can certainly contact the court and ask that that be lifted. It's also a surrender of firearms order. We want to make sure that all firearms are secured outside of the home, that the defendant does not have access to those firearms for safety issues. And those need to be surrendered within 5 days generally if the police weren't able to seize those weapons at the time of the arrest. Again, we work towards addressing the underlying issues through court-ordered treatment. In a domestic violence case, there might be strictly domestic violence issues. Oftentimes we see those coupled with sometimes mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and want to make sure that whatever resolution the case has, that the prosecutor is recommending treatment to make sure that the victim stays safe and that these crimes don't continue to take place. So I mentioned previously that I have a domestic violence advocate that works in my office. She provides support and resources to the victims of domestic violence. These services, one of the advantages in the city of Kenmore is that these services, excuse me, are available to all individuals that live within the city, not just those who are involved in criminal charges. So, I'm sorry. If an individual has concerns, wants resources, is looking into maybe getting a protection order against their spouse, but they're not involved in the criminal justice system, our domestic violence advocate is available and willing to help them at any time. Our advocate serves as a liaison between victims and the courts. So she'll keep the victims apprised of the status of the case all the way from the very first hearing through probation, if necessary, and continues to communicate with those victims throughout the entire process. Again, access to protection orders and the drafting of the no contact orders and orders to surrender firearms and other documents that the court might need to consider on a case. Therapeutic court alternatives. So you've heard a lot about community court tonight, and I'm going to touch upon that just briefly. But in addition to community court, we have the option of a therapeutic court called Regional Mental Health Court. Regional Mental Health Court is generally for those who have Access 1 or an Access 2 mental health diagnosis that is considered ongoing and persistent. We also have our Regional Veterans Court, and those are for military veterans with an honorable or general discharge. Veterans Court can involve both mental health or chemical dependency issues. The referral process for therapeutic court alternatives, or the mental health court and Veterans Court, is that I meet with our defense attorneys. We determine whether they're appropriate for the therapeutic court. Oftentimes, defense will share first in terms of a Veterans Court referral, whether they are a veteran, whether they were discharged honorably, and if they're interested in Veterans Court. The mental health court, again, do we suspect that they have a mental health access 1 or access 2 diagnosis? Oftentimes the defense may share, that they have in fact been diagnosed with that previously. And if the defendant is indicating a willingness to at least look into Veterans Court or regional mental health court, then we make that referral down to the King County Prosecutor's Office. They then do a screening for a diagnostic analysis and what services might be needed. If King County Prosecutor's Office indicates that they will in fact accept the case and the defendant indicates that they are willing to participate in one of those 2 therapeutic courts, then our case is transferred to the King County Prosecutor's Office after the defendant has entered mental health court or Veterans Court. Community court. I know everybody's been talking about community court, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. I appreciate the presentations of our judges. It's certainly thorough. Community court with Kenmore began in January of 2023. We address nonviolent crimes, provide the resources that you've heard about already, including counseling, housing, education, employment, licensing, legal aid, and more. Referral process. Just want to tell you a little bit about the referral process. So when I receive a case from the police, a case report, I review that case. There are only certain types of crimes that are now eligible for community court. So we don't take any driving related cases in community court. We don't allow anyone to join community court who has a recent violent felony criminal history. That generally means within the last 5 years. And so the types of cases that we see in community court are generally theft cases, criminal trespass cases, sometimes an assault case, certainly not a domestic violence assault. Sometimes there might be a minor assault situation that we would consider. So once we've screened for the type of case it is, and I look at the defendant's criminal history, make sure that they're not excluded for other reasons, a violent felony history or any past sex offense history. And then I try to make the determination of, does it appear, at least based on the face of the police report, whether an individual could benefit from the services offered through community court. If I have questions about that, I oftentimes reach out to Mr. McNichols, our public defender, if he's representing these individuals, and ask him for his thoughts on that. If he thinks that an individual might benefit from the services offered through community court. And then I go ahead and make that referral. And by that, I mean, I reach out to the public defender and say, I'm recommending these individuals or referring these individuals to community court. The public defender then meets with them prior to the arraignment hearing and lets them know that they're eligible. And if they choose to join, then they can join us. if they do choose to join, then they can come to community court and observe. The first time they're there, they're just there to observe the community court hearing, kind of get an idea of what it's all about. They observe our communications with the participants and get a feel for what it's all about. If they're interested in participating after the end of that first hearing, then we schedule what's called a needs assessment. And that is an interview essentially between our community court coordinator and the defendant. You know, what are the types of things that, you know, brought you here today? Do you have chemical dependency issues, mental health issues? Do you want to, are you interested in seeking treatment for that? You know, what is your education level? Are you interested in obtaining additional education, you know, housing, job skills, those types of things? After the needs assessment, I review that, Mr. McNichols reviews that as well. And we draft what's called a stipulated order of continuance. That's essentially a contract between myself and the defendant about what the expectations are. Usually that includes some sort of treatment, whether it be a mental health treatment or chemical dependency treatment. Oftentimes it includes both. We see a lot of overlap there. And if they agree to sign that document, then they get started in community court. And then they come back, you know, once a week. We have updates. They keep us apprised of how their treatment is going. And best case scenario, they graduate. We've certainly had a lot of graduates. In Kenmore, unfortunately, we've had a few revocations as well. So if they refuse to follow through with their treatment options or the agreements that I have with them in that stipulated order of continuance, or sometimes they just stop showing up to court, or they commit new crimes while they're participating in community court, then sometimes, unfortunately, we do have to revoke their participation, and then they're sentenced in court and remain on probation. All right. Oh, okay. I guess that's the end of my presentation. Sorry, I didn't realize it ended so abruptly. In terms of, well, I'll go ahead and ask if there's any questions at this point.
Questions? Councilor Lucas.
Yes, I asked the same question of the judges who came right before you, and they said that you might be a better person to ask. But it looks like in Kenmore's 5-year case history that we haven't reached the same level of filing, actually quite substantially, that was sort of the level that we had about 5 years ago, excuse me, before COVID. And could you speak to that a little bit more, why we haven't yet reached those same levels pre-COVID in terms of filing for Kenmore?
What, and I'm sorry to pass this off. I think that the chief might be able to talk a little bit about that. What I can say is that the cases that we receive are then reviewed for filing. I'm certainly not declining to file more cases. I think the number of cases that we've received from the police department have been fewer than what they may have been, 10 years ago. I can say that we are seeing an increase in DUI cases. And as the judge touched upon recently, any of those DUI cases where it requires blood results, where the police officer takes him to the hospital or to the fire department to draw blood, say on a drug DUI, or somebody who refuses to take the breathalyzer test, there's quite a bit of backup. at the state crime lab. And we're often waiting 12 months to get the results of those blood results, or the blood alcohol results from the blood. So that is slowing things down some. We don't always have to wait for those blood results if there's an accident involved, if it's a multi-time offender, then we'll go ahead and file. But we're filing the cases that are coming into our office.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I was just happened to be curious. I noticed that Kenmore isn't following the same trend as King County in terms of its trajectory and returning to those. So I was, a little curious why that might be. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's great if we have fewer cases than we did before COVID. I was just curious, what the reason for that is. On that same topic, I'm just curious. I know you said that you're not declining more cases that officers are sending you, but just out of curiosity, about what percentage are declined by you or your team?
Probably, anecdotally, I'd say less than 5%. We have fabulous police officers. They draft solid cases as long as there are witnesses that are available to us and that want to, cooperate. Then we go ahead and file those cases. So there are very few cases that we decline to file that we receive from the police department.
Thank you. No, that answers all of my questions. I appreciate that. And thank you for all of your hard work in terms of serving our city. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, can I just add one more thing? I was just thinking about with respect to your first question about filings and the numbers being down. One thing that I had noticed recently is the number of thefts and criminal trespasses that we've received has declined as well. And I met with Chief Moen and we talked about that, and we set up a meeting a couple of weeks ago now. We had a great meeting with Safeway and some of the corporate loss prevention individuals that work with Safeway. And I think that, things that we hear on the news and, in public is that, the police won't do anything about shoplifts, or the prosecution won't do anything about shoplifts. And it was great to meet with our Safeway partners and say, just the opposite. If somebody is stealing and committing shoplifts, committing crimes within your store, please reach out to us. I will prosecute those cases. And oftentimes those are individuals that are appropriate for community court or other types of therapeutic alternatives or options for restorative justice. So we did have a great meeting with them, and I have seen just in the last couple of weeks a few more cases come in from Safeway. So I think community outreach is something that's important as well, and letting the community know that we are there to support them and to prosecute crimes. And I will continue to try to do that with some of our other business partners.
Thank you very much. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any further questions. Thank you very much. Ms. Roberts, appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Public Defender Services Update presented by Public Defender Jeff McNichols.
And good evening. Thank you again for the invitation to speak before the council and the community. My name is Jeff McNichols. I'm the public defender, and I do work with a lot of cities, and this is the only city that invites us to come and speak. So I appreciate you doing that, and the community is well served by a council that's acutely aware of what's going on in the court. And I thank you. I appreciate that. So again, my name is Jeff McNichols. The law firm I work for is Stewart McNichols Harmel. We've been a law firm since 1992 and continuously operating. And we've served as the public defender in several other jurisdictions, as I mentioned, in King County, including Shoreline, some of the neighboring cities, Bothell and Lake Forest Park, to name a few. In addition to myself, who supervises the legal work for the public defender in Kenmore, I have two great associates that work with me, Rachel Liu, who's been an attorney for 11 years working in public defense, and Sean Parent, who's been a public defender for 24 years. So we'd like to say a very experienced staff representing the public defender in your city. In addition to the Kenmore Community Court, myself and my law firm has been instrumental in implementing 5 other community and wellness courts in King County. So we're very happy when the discussion started about the community court, and we're excited to be involved in it and very pleased with the results so far. Our firm emphasizes trial and appellate work, continuing education, restorative justice, and working with non-citizens and the interesting issues and acute issues that they encounter. One other thing I should probably say is I'm pretty sure I'm saying this correctly. We've been the public defender for the city of Kenmore since you incorporated. So I'm proud to be myself included here this whole time. So you've heard a lot of things, a lot of topics. I'm going to try and not cover what you've heard already about community courts, et cetera, et cetera. I do want to touch on those, but being the beneficiary of being at the end of this presentation, my slides I try to consider things that may be more interesting, not that anything else wasn't, but something that are hot topics that may be, or more interesting issues that I encounter as a public defender. There was a period when we did this presentation when we were just coming out of COVID, and as we heard, things are more or less back to normal. But there's been some enhancements that from the public defender side and to my clientele have been helpful. We've heard about Zoom hearings, obviously. We were in a time when it was all Zoom, and then we still have a hybrid Zoom process. And not only, I think we all can know the benefits and the drawbacks of Zoom. That being said, for my clientele, you can imagine folks that are deemed indigent, it can be a struggle for them to stop whatever their daily activity, whether it be work, childcare, et cetera, and go into a courthouse and say, get a continuance or come in and the judge says you're compliant, or there's a lot of hearings that are somewhat perfunctory, and that can be routine for me because I'm there every day, but it's very disruptive in somebody's life, especially if the reason for the hearing is not because they're in trouble, but it may just be a neutral hearing or they're actually doing well. And so the Zoom gives us the opportunity to allow our clients to not have to deal with transportation issues, childcare issues, possibly having work absence that prejudices their job. And it also, as we heard in a previous slide, it increases the chances of them showing up. A lot of folks miss court because of things that are out of their control. And so that's been very helpful to have that as a tool. Trials are back to normal like they were pre-COVID. We also have a new court rule called 3.4, which allows attorneys, if they're in communication with their client, to appear for their client for somewhat routine hearings. So the client doesn't even have to appear even on Zoom. So for example, there's 2 benefits to that. One is the process speeds up a little, it's more efficient. Gives our clients the ability to have us show up for them and not have to, again, miss important things in their life. And 3, it really increases our clients' desire to keep in touch with us because sometimes that can be difficult for various reasons. But if they know that we can vouch for them in court and say our client has been in touch with us, we represent that we just need to continue this, or we're setting it a trial date, the court will allow us as attorneys to do that for our clients, and then we communicate the outcome to the client. Now, more serious hearings like sentencings, arraignments, things where there's probation violations, they have to be present. So we talked about the various ways that cases are resolved. I know you've obviously heard most of these things talked about already, but I kind of want to highlight a few things. We all know that cases go to trial. We've talked a lot about the alternatives that we see in resolutions like community court, veterans court, mental health court. But that only captures a percentage of the cases. A lot of people aren't appropriate for community court. You can imagine why. There are more serious offenses. There might be domestic violence or driving offenses, and it's not an appropriate place for that kind of case. So, and then for example, mental health court. It's a great program. We utilize the regional mental health system through the King County District Court. So as Ms. Roberts stated, if we have a client that we think may be suitable for that, and they have appropriate diagnosis, the attorneys talk, and if the client is amenable, we talk to the mental health court. The mental health court talks to them, interviews them, goes over the program, and for a lot of folks, it's a great program because you're addressing the case from a different way with judges, prosecutors, defenders, and specialists that are acutely aware of the person's needs based on their diagnosis. So those courts are a great opportunity. However, when I talk to persons that are not involved in the court system, one thing that is a challenge is that mental health court cannot be forced on somebody. And a lot of times we have clients or there's defendants in the system that have the greatest need, but they're not willing to do it. So I would say maybe once a month, we see a defendant who is charged with some crime, usually a domestic one. They're an adult who lives in a family setting. Either they're an adult child of a family where they live in this home, or they have a brother, sister, an adult roommate, where they've been trying to help their family member or friend, and that person, because of a persistent mental health issue, has episodes of violence or acting out. And a lot of times, those people in their lives have no other place to turn because they can't get them the help they need. And unfortunately, the last thing they do is say, I have to call the police. And when they come to court, they say, I've heard about mental health court. I really want my son, brother, friend to get the opportunity. And unfortunately, sometimes we'll talk to that client and they're like, I don't need it. I don't want to do that. And so for all the folks that it works for, great. There is a gap, and it is, everybody in the court system knows this, there is a gap for those folks that need it the most, but unfortunately, if they say I'm not willing to do it, they can't participate. So it's something that's a long-term issue, but I just wanted to highlight that for you. Obviously, Veterans Court, another great opportunity, much more levels of amenability from our clientele who want to take advantage of that. And again, a lot of the cases that can't qualify for community court can be good places for veterans or through the mental health court system. And then as Ms. Roberts says, there's other ways to resolve cases. Cases can be on diversions, SOCs, et cetera. And obviously, if a case doesn't meet any of those criteria or there's the right factors, we go to trial and the jury decides. As you've heard, like every community, you have a mix of cases here. I think you've heard today that we're seeing an uptick in DUI cases. There's, unfortunately, every community has instances of domestic violence issues. We've heard about the property crime, and I've been here a long time, and I can say that I too am seeing this community. As Sarah Roberts said, we hear in the news about shopkeepers or merchants or retailers and some other places that just give up because stealing is pervasive and they don't feel that there's a response to it. I can say from my experience that it's taken seriously here as a defender. It's taken seriously in the sense that there's accountability, there's a desire to break the cycle for a lot of folks, unfortunately, that do it persistently. But there is also, if they're not willing to do that, there is a response from the prosecutor and the court. And then we also see, obviously, other types of crime, property damage, et cetera. So this is a slide that I created to kind of give you an idea of when folks think of the lawyers going to court, you think that we do lawyer things like argue, write briefs, et cetera. When I started in this profession 25 plus years ago, I think I did 90% legal work and 10% with other being like helping out clients with other issues in their life, like licensing, maybe treatment, et cetera. And now I would say that has flipped. I seem to do 10% legal work and 90% social work. And that's a good thing, I think, because we still are performing all the duties a lawyer would do, but there's a response in the justice system to address the other things, the underlying issues. And before, that wasn't a hot topic or top of mind. It was jail or no jail. And that was what we were fighting for. That's why we had to do so much more legal work, because it was kind of an all or nothing. And unfortunately, over the years, we found that just incarceration without any sort of rehabilitation was costly to everybody, and it wasn't effective. So the things that myself and my staff engage in on a much greater basis now are things that are social work related, such as the things that you see in community court. For folks that aren't in community court, we help them with whatever their issue is with substance use disorders, mental health treatment. We help them connect them with providers. Most of our clientele do not have private insurance, as you can imagine. Some have no health care. So sometimes we have to start with getting them health care. And a lot of the agencies we work with are a one-stop shop where they can get health care and the treatment all in one stop. And we have a lot of clients that have housing needs. If you were to ask me what is the biggest issue that I face with my clients, it's housing. There's a lot of shelters, there's a lot of outreach, and it's greater and it's better than I've ever seen it in my career. That being said, there's still a lack of affordable housing and housing options. And for some folks, not around here, but some of the shelters are just a difficult place for them just because of whatever issues they're dealing with. And sometimes the clientele in shelters in some shelters, there is still some sorts of violence and drug use going on. And we have clients that just can't take that, understandably. So that is a big issue that I deal with on a daily basis for my clients. Licensing. Folks, it's getting better, but connecting them with ways to get validly licensed. And for some folks, it's just educating them on what are the steps. I've had many people, meet them at the first hearing and they think, oh, there's no chance I can get a license. And I have access to DOL records in real time, and I can show them, hey, you just have to do this or do that. And you can just see the clouds part, and they realize I've been operating under the theory I couldn't get a license for years, and unfortunately driving illegally, allegedly. And so we all want them to not come to court for driving without a license. We want them to be validly licensed, and so that we don't have to have their case and they're legal. But just educating them on that and getting them licensed is a big part of our job. We also have folks that are non-citizens, and you may or may not know this, but depending on, there's certain crimes, even at this level, misdemeanor level, that will cause not only potential deportation, but exclusion from admission back to the US. And you can imagine there are all kinds of issues that go along with that. If people are established here, they have families here, they have jobs here, they may have property here, and they are charged with something that objectively is not as serious, it's not a felony, but because of the federal immigration laws, is a trigger to deportation and exclusion. So a big part of our business is we work with immigration counsel, and we get advice to our clients, and we can navigate with them through the system so that we do everything we can to avoid an unintended consequence that's way bigger than a misdemeanor case. And on a great note, your city prosecutor, Ms. Roberts, and her staff are very amenable to being creative in the right circumstance to making sure that there's addressing the case, but not having long-lasting permanent effects on their ability to stay in the US. Another thing that is a big challenge is we have folks that are incarcerated, and getting them transitioned from jail back to life, to a normal life. You can imagine there's a lot of folks that when they come into jail, they're also maybe in jail for other things. So Kenmore may have them in custody for, say, shoplifting, but they also have a King County charge of some felony, and maybe they have a Lake Forest park charge. So we have to coordinate with all of their other attorneys to make sure that we can get them the best result, but also transition them out of jail to success. So sometimes you're incarcerated, you can imagine, you lose your housing, you lose your job, you came into jail with a substance use disorder problem, and you're not being able to use in custody because it's not there, but you're going to transition out. And is there a good transition to the community where you have the ability to have the best tools to avoid getting back into drug addiction or any substance use addiction? So a lot of times we work with agencies while the person is in jail to get them evaluated and get a plan in place for a transition to inpatient treatment, and then a transition from there into housing, and then a transition into benefits, whether it be job training or education or just services that folks need to be successful when they get out of custody. So a big part of our practice is helping that transition from jail to back to the community. And I know we've heard a lot about the community court, but one thing I want to add to the discussion is the Community Court Resource Center is for everybody. So you don't have to have a case there. And a lot of times we have folks in our court that we represent that aren't community court appropriate, for example, a licensing case. But we can still say, hey, go to the Resource Center. We give them a flyer, and you'll have a DOL representative there at the Resource Center that can connect you with the resources you need to get your license. Or we have a person that's charged with maybe a domestic violence crime, and they are having issues getting health care to deal with their underlying substance use disorder. So we say, let's go to the Resource Center. You'll meet an evaluator there, and you can benefit from that apart from being in community court. And so that you can see from the flow chart, the number of participants and then the number of visits to the Resource Center is exponential compared to the participants, just because that service is made known to our broader clientele and the community. I wanted to end this with a special thank you because as Judge Martinez said, the staff you have here are excellent. And again, I work with a lot of cities, and Garrett and Stephanie are passionate and they're engaged and they really care about what's going on. I get regular contacts from them asking me, how are things going? What sort of needs do you see or issues that we don't know about that we should? And based on those conversations, Stephanie and Garrett put forward to you something that I asked them to ask you to consider, which was alternatives to incarceration. And in a nutshell, you can imagine if you have two defendants that walk into court, one that has means, one that doesn't have means. And the judge has to look at them in an unbiased way. And both of those people could get the same sentence or the same order, such as you have to do 10 days of electronic home detention. So the person with means, not a problem. They have a home, they have the money to pay for that, which can be, it's not extravagant, but for people without those means, it's unattainable. So the person with means could do that fairly easily. The person without means that cannot afford that would say, I can't do those 10 days on EHM. And unfortunately, the default, just based on the system, is instead of, if you can't do EHM, you go to jail. And you can imagine the imbalance there for that person. They're already unable to pay for the EHM, and then they have to go to jail, and that may cause innumerable problems, work-related, family-related, sometimes health-related, doctor visits, et cetera. So with the help of your staff, you looked at the issue, and I appreciate you funding the EHM and SCRAM program to allow folks that cannot afford that to be on equal footing with people that can. And not only does that help them, but there is a financial benefit to the city as well. It's more expensive to put somebody in jail, and it's more expensive to society on the whole if they're put backwards by that. So I like to think it's both, a good policy and economically sound. So thank you for that.
You open for questions now? Do we have any questions? Deputy Mayor?
No questions,
Yes.
just really want to thank you for just the real positive message and finishing on such a high note. Really appreciate your comments about the work that this council has done. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And thank you for your compassionate work. There was one slide, I think I've got here just a second. It was your representation beyond the law slide and the way you presented that. The 90-10 flip.
Yeah.
Just it's amazing the progress we have made
Yeah.
in, say, 25 years, right?
Yeah, when I started.
Big deal.
There was a war on drugs back when I started, and you can imagine the pendulum has swung, and I think it's obviously, as a person in the system, I think it's been to our benefit for everybody. Very much.
Councilor Marshall?
I also gotta tell my colleagues that DOL person being there at the court, that also is amazing. I mean, such a resource to be able to have somebody to tell you, hey, here's what you need to do to get your license back. Doesn't happen, it's not accomplished immediately, but at least somebody's there to point them and tell them exactly what to do. That's great.
And we've actually, you can imagine DOL, sadly, is somewhat on the high end of red tape. And we've had people go in there and literally walk out with a license because there's just the wait times when you submitting things online, et cetera. You have somebody with their fingers on the keyboard that can get things done. And we have people get licensed that day. Yeah, it is.
Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any further questions. Thank you so much for your time tonight. We
It's
really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Nice to see you all again. Thank you.
I'm just going to note the time is 9:11. Unless there are any objections, I would suggest that we take a quick 5-minute break. All right, we will be back at 9:16. All right, the Kenmore City Council will return to order. Next on the agenda, Regional Crisis Response Agency, presented by RCR Executive Director Brooke Butner. Got a name taking everything.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brooke Bittner. I'm the Executive Director of Regional Crisis Response Agency, which I will call RACER tonight, RCR. We call it RACER. And I am delighted to be here with you, Mayor Herbig, Deputy Mayor O'Kane, and all the council members. I love when we get together in person, and fun to have some new faces as well. Looking forward to meeting and chatting a little more. So Regional Crisis Response Agency, RACER, is the product of an interlocal agreement between the cities of Kenmore, Shoreline, Bothell, Lake Forest Park, and Kirkland, and was established at the beginning of 2023 and really officially went operationally live in June of 2023. But it was the outgrowth of the Radar Navigator program, some work that Kenmore and these cities had been doing for about 5 years prior to the RACER program going live. So I point that out because I think Kenmore has really been a leader in alternative response as society has moved toward rethinking policing. Kenmore was already there, along with the other Radar cities, was well poised to engage in the work of RACER and the work of alternative response. I brought a picture of our crisis response team. These 10 folks are our full-time career service crisis responders, one of whom, the person on the bottom, in the bottom middle, Melissa, was just out here in your lobby working with a woman that had walked in that is living homeless with a 1-year-old baby. And they're gone now, and Melissa's gonna work with her, worked with Chief Moen and some folks from the community, thanks to Rob, to meet that very immediate need of somewhere to sleep tonight. At this point, this is our 10 full-time. We now have 13 crisis responders. As of tomorrow, we'll have our 13th come on board, working out in the field. What we're doing out in the field, I'm calling it behavioral health first response. And if you've been around for a while, you've seen this terminology change and evolve. That for a while it was called co-response, the Radar Navigator program, where it was very classically a social worker in the car with a police officer. And as we moved from the Radar Navigator program to the RACER program, there was a shift to alternative response, a social worker or a team of social workers instead of a police officer. And what we're really doing operationally is kind of a mix of that, with a focus on the first response, including behavioral health. When someone is in acute behavioral health emergency and they call 911, that they get the right resource, a social worker, whether that be a team of 2 social workers deploying independently, or if there's some safety issue with a law enforcement officer, or if there's some medical issue, like in the case of an overdose with a firefighter or an EMT. So our first response system up here in North King County is transforming to include behavioral health as part of the 911 toolkit, alongside police and fire. So I have just some pictures here. You'll see one of our crisis responders with a firefighter at the home of an older adult, the crisis response team with an individual living homeless, and then working with an older adult, again, an individual that was in crisis and self-presented at one of the police stations. Oh, I wanted to say during this slide that what they're doing is in progress de-escalation. So 911 calls, they'll respond to the field with the officers, or at times to crisis responders. They're doing informal assessment. We're not operating as a behavioral health provider agency. So informal assessment of kind of what's going on, what's underlying this current crisis, and then referral to the community of care. And we really try to pass people off to the community of care as soon as it's appropriate and step away as soon as they're connected, so that we can protect our first response capacity to be there when there's that 911 call. I have some data from 2023. During 2023, we started the year as about half of our team being considered radar navigators and half of our team working for the city of Kirkland for their community responder program, as we brought those teams together into the new iteration of the RACER agency. But these numbers reflect the work of all our team regardless of where they were being paid out of at the beginning of the year. But so for the year of 2023, we served 883 individuals in crisis during 2,696 service encounters. And that means that sometimes people will have a single encounter with a crisis responder that could be anywhere from a quick 15 minutes check-in, how are things going? Here's the crisis line if things go bad again, to multi-hour, 8-hour stint with somebody who's in acute crisis, has just experienced a loss to suicide, or is in highly acute behavioral crisis, and it takes a long time to get them down to where they're willing to work on the next steps. And then for some folks, they're seeing our crisis responders multiple times, either during multiple crisis events or to make sure that they get connected to the community of care. And there are some people that we see for a long time, like multiple years, over and over and over, because they keep falling into crisis and because it's so hard to engage them with care. And we want to stay with them until we know that they are where they need to be. I have a little bit of data about call volume for Kenmore, and I should have included in the slide, but checked before I came up from 2023 numbers as well. What you're seeing here is quarterly call volume, not encounters, just individuals served. And the blue bars are full agency and the green bars are City of Kenmore. And then it's blown up on just the green bars to show City of Kenmore. And so this is the growth in call volume over the course of 2023 and the first quarter of 2024. And we've really been focusing on Kenmore because our numbers were really low in 2022 and in early 2023. And we've engaged in a number of strategies. A big thanks to Chief Moen, who immediately engaged in saying, how can we get the deputies calling the crisis responders out more? How can we do a better job of identifying which calls would be appropriate for RACER? We also had a huge change in that our crisis responders are now on King County Sheriff's Office air. So they can now hear all Kenmore and Shoreline calls. And that's thanks to KCSO leadership that they finally, after years of working toward that finally went through in late fall last year. And so that resulted in the crisis responders are on for Shoreline and Kenmore assigned to this kind of beat 7 days a week and early in the morning until late into the evening. We're not covering the overnight yet, but that means that anytime there's a call, they're going to hear it in Kenmore and in Shoreline, and they can self-attach to the call. So that's, I think, one of the drivers behind our increased number. We're also stationing folks here from time to time, even though the volume in Kenmore is low enough that if they're here, they're probably not going to get a call. But we want them to be here so that they're getting to know the deputies, and there's just some familiarity when that call does come, that the deputies will think of it. So I'm really delighted to see that our volume has gone up so much for Q1. I don't think that it will go up too much more after this. I think this is kind of getting to a realistic point for Kenmore's volume. But we'll continue to really focus on making sure Kenmore and Lake Forest Park as well are getting a high level of service as a smaller city. And please, if there are questions as I'm going, I'm happy to take them. This is just a little bit of demographic data about the folks we served program-wide. I'm going to give you verbally the Kenmore specifics. So during 2023, we served 23 people in Kenmore. 18% of those were living homeless. Our sample size for Kenmore is not great, so we can just do what we can do with the numbers that we have. We don't have housing data on everybody, but that is representative of what we're seeing across our cities, that we're somewhere between 20 and 30% folks are living homeless. In Kenmore, the folks we served were 43% Black, Indigenous, person of color, 57% white, and 8% spoke some language other than English. And all of those are indicators that we're watching just to make sure that we're providing services in an equitable way. I want to share some outcome numbers that won't be new to council members that were here last year. These are actually outcome numbers for the Radar Navigator program, so a previous iteration. But because it takes a few years to really see things flow through the system, this is all we have at this point. But the Radar Navigator program, because we were funded and still are by King County MID dollars, gets a lot of great data analysis on the county side of outcome data from the criminal legal system, the behavioral health system, and from hospitals. And folks that had a touch, one or more touches with the Radar Navigator program in the 2 years after that touch experienced a 67% reduction in adult jail bookings. And that's a really, I think I'll focus on that one for the criminal justice or public safety study session, that diverting people out before they hit the court, before they hit a jail night, even before they hit the community court, that's going to be a better outcome for that individual. So that one was really exciting when we saw that come through. 60% reduction in crisis services events. So that's a reduction in crisis diversion facility, mobile crisis team, next day appointments in the behavioral health system. It's an indicator that something worked. Of course, we can't attribute cause, but when we see numbers this high, we're hopeful that it's because of the intervention that we had. 4% reduction in all-cause emergency department of visits and a 14% increase in enrollment in behavioral health care, so outpatient care. And that's one I think is really low because King County is only capturing publicly funded behavioral health. And in our North King County community, a lot of folks have private insurance or are private paying, so we don't have that data. And that is my quick presentation tonight. I am so just happy to be here with you and would love to answer any questions. Actually, that picture is Melissa as well. Those are two of the folks that respond frequently in Kenmore, assigned to KCSO cities. And just want to thank City of Kenmore, your council and your staff for becoming a part of the RACER agency, for seeing that the Radar Navigator program was effective and then taking that next step with it. This is truly exciting stuff. And across the state, we are leading. We truly, truly are leading the state and the country in developing a robust first response behavioral health system. So thank you. What questions can I answer?
Questions? Mr. Lutz?
Actually, first, can I allow
Sure.
Mr. City Manager
Rob?
say something?
Yeah, I have a question, but only after you have your
Okay,
questions.
all right, okay. I wasn't sure if you had
No,
some
no,
statement.
after
I'm
you.
so- I apologize. I thought you had some other statement to make. I just first wanted to start off by saying thank you. This is phenomenal, and I'm so glad that we have this program up and running. To see those numbers, like you said, you know, maybe technically you can't say it's causation, but I think that there's a strong correlation. There's something that's really good. So I'm very excited to see this, and I'm very grateful for what you and your team are doing, what services that you're providing and support that you're offering to our community members. So thank you. I did have one question for you, and you know, this is looking fantastic. So what's next for RACER? Like, just thinking the next few years, 5 years out, where is this headed? What's the direction going?
Oh my gosh, somebody stop me if I talk too long. Because this is so exciting. We just finished the Rubik's Cube of getting all the crisis responders on radio air. That was our big challenge for 2023. And we've really gotten that done, and it's very successful in getting them deployed directly to the scenes. And the next big challenge is going to be direct deploy from the 911 primary safety answering point. In our community, we have 2 dispatch centers, 911 call centers. One is NORCOM and one is King County Sheriff's Office Communications. And our focus as a program is starting with NORCOM. NORCOM is not yet willing to directly deploy social workers in lieu of a sworn police officer to some of these behavioral health scenes. So part of what we're doing is working with our colleagues across the state where there is a little more progress in direct deploy through the 911 systems and saying, how are they doing it? How are they doing interoperability with 988 mental health crisis line, and pushing the whole system toward a different kind of response. And so direct deploy is probably our next big challenge. But the other thing I would like to see in the next few years, and I may come back to you in the next legislative session, is that behavioral health be clearly defined as part of our first response system, and that all of the benefits and structural supports that come with that go behind the work that RACER's doing and that other programs are doing across the state. We actually had legislation, my professional association drafted legislation this last session, and it passed the House unanimously and then died in the Senate, I think because of a short session. It just didn't make it in. And so we have another crack at it next session, and a lot of support from our delegation up here in North King County to do what 911 dispatchers did about 10 years ago and start walking through the legislative system and saying, this is a part of the first response system. And as a state, we believe in the value of the behavioral health tool in the first response toolkit. So thank you.
so exciting to hear. Thank you so much.
I think so.
And also along the lines of what's next, right now you have 7-day-a-week coverage during the day. Thoughts on needs for more than that, like going to 24/7?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're doing day and swing right now. We're about 6 a.m. to 1 a.m., 7 days a week, and we have pretty robust coverage kind of sprinkled across the region, and they can cross deploy across jurisdictions. And we're in the process of analyzing call for service data on day, swing, and overnight shifts to really understand what the need is. The interlocal agreement does specifically say that this agency should provide some form of 24/7 coverage for the community. And so we really just want to understand what is the true need, what would the cost be as we engage in the 25-26 budgeting process that will come back before you. How much would it cost to do different levels of coverage on the overnight shift? So more to come.
Deputy Mayor?
First, I just want to say I'm really excited about the legislative funding and designation you're seeking. Behavioral health being incorporated into first response is just, it's crucial, really. And just looking at the small slice in 1 year of increased dedicated resources to this in our first emergency response, those numbers were great. And so the thing that I just wanted to say is that this is my 5th year, going into my 5th year on the council, and I've seen your work progress. And I'm thinking about when we first started, how many people were you working with, 5 years ago? To see we're up to 13 people in Racer doing this critical work is really exciting. And we are so fortunate to have your passion and commitment to this work here in King County, in Kenmore, serving us. Your leadership, we couldn't have a better executive director for this program. And your leadership inspires others, and I'm really thankful for it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. I usually say this, but I live up here in North King County. This is my community too. I live in Lake Forest Park, but I recreate here. My kids go to school and daycare here in Kenmore. This is my home, and we're doing it. So thank you. I agree. It's incredible to see. When I first started, we had spots for 4 part-time contractors, and I think we had 2 because they were really hard to fill. But our police chiefs and our city leadership saw that this was important before this kind of mass movement toward it, and invested in it before the rest of the region did. And so we were, like I said, just so well positioned to leap forward. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll repeat what my colleague said. We really appreciate all the work you do, and this is exciting. It's just really exciting stuff to see. So thank you for everything, and look
Thank you,
forward
guys.
to.
I
hearing
appreciate
back
you
on
all
soon.
too.
Next on the agenda, Connections Health Solutions, presented by Connections Health Solutions Vice President of Implementation, Sarah Lopez.
Sarah, we see you're online with us. Can you hear us?
All right, can you guys hear me?
We hear you.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I also just echo your sentiments around the work that Brooke has done with her team, and along those same lines, mirroring the Crisis Now model with the Someone to Respond being the Racer program and whatnot. We are looking at Connections Health Solutions, the crisis center. So there's somewhere to go on the continuum. So I'm hoping to spend some time this evening just kind of diving in, giving you all a little bit of information. Recognize that these slides were drafted to give you an update, but wanted to also take a time to kind of level set and make sure that all of the information is being shared around who we are and what we'll be doing. So thank you for the opportunity. We are the crisis provider that is going to be opening up the Kirkland Crisis Response Center in July of 2024. So roughly 90 days or so, we are slated to open up our doors. We are located in Kirkland, and the pictures that you are seeing on the right side of the slide here are the actual pictures of the building. We are located at 11410 Northeast 122nd Way. And what you're seeing on that top picture is as individuals come in to that parking lot there, that would be a walk-in center or an urgent care. And I can get into the continuum here in just 1 second, but that's what we consider to be our front door entrance. And then the bottom picture is what we would consider to be our backdoor entrance, which is a designated first responder, law enforcement, and emergency services entrance for patients and individuals to come into our center. We will be serving the adult population. I just spoke about the front door and the back door. Currently, we are occupying the first 2 floors of that building. And the 3rd floor of the building is to be determined as far as how we will leverage the space for either co-located services or other opportunities at a later time. Next slide. Thank you very much. This slide here talks a little bit about our continuum. So what will we be providing at the center and what type of services will be available to those that are seeking crisis services. So I talked a little bit about our urgent care. That's what we consider to be our front door. So similar to the way that you and I access urgent care today for medical reasons, it will be very similar in the way that someone can just walk into our center and they will be seen by a behavioral health provider within 90 minutes. They will be able to have a psychiatric assessment. They will not need an appointment. They will be able to access services on a walk-in basis. Let's say, for example, somebody who is walking in, is just a mom who is new to the area and needs a prescription to be refilled. That's something that we can do in urgent care on a walk-in basis and not necessarily needing to be obviously admitted or to be routed to the emergency room, et cetera. So really, it is intended to be a level of care for those individuals that are low acuity and just need perhaps a medication prescription, a bridge appointment, or it could be a situation where somebody is maybe not in touch with reality in that moment, able to walk in. Our team is able to meet that person at that door and recognize that perhaps they need additional level of care or they need additional services to help stabilize that individual. They're able to move from urgent care into our 23-hour observation. Our 23-hour observation level of care was created by Dr. Chris Carson out of Texas. And what he found was as patients were coming in and presenting at the emergency room, he was really presented with an opportunity to either say inpatient or outpatient. There was no really middle ground. And so he had pioneered the 23-hour observation level of care that allowed people to be able to have access to a multidisciplinary team, have intensive wraparound services in the moment to help resolve a crisis that didn't require someone to be, either discharged back out into the community when they really weren't stable or safe, or admitted to a 3 or 5 day stay when that's not necessarily what they needed also. So we will have the 23-hour observation level of care at the Kirkland Center. This will allow individuals to, again, be met with a multidisciplinary team, a behavioral health provider, nurses, we have techs, we have peers on staff, we have administrative support to really wrap around case management, to really wrap around this individual in the moment to resolve their crisis and help provide support to stabilize that individual and then be discharged back out to the community if they are stable and can be. In the event that someone needs additional level of care or longer period of time with us, then we will have two 16-bed crisis stabilization units on the second floor of the Kirkland building. One of those units will be dedicated to our evaluation and treatment. So those individuals that are coming in that perhaps are in involuntary status and require evaluation and treatment services, we will have 16 beds designated for that particular population, as well as 16 beds for voluntary individuals that are seeking services and treatment on their own accord. Our average length of stay is around 3 to 5 days. Obviously, that's an average. There are outliers that require additional days should someone need additional time to become stable and for additional supports and services to be put in place. And then on the back end of our continuum, we will offer a service called Transitions. And really that was developed to be a bridge for those individuals who have come into Connections, received services, and are being discharged back out into the community, back out into the area in which they reside to resume services back with our outpatient provider. We recognize sometimes they're wait lists, sometimes they're not able to get back into their provider right away. And so Transitions really serves as that bridge appointments where someone could be accessing outpatient type level of care services until they're able to be reestablished or to get in with their provider that they had been seeking before coming to crisis or Connections Health Solutions. One other point of conversation that I do want to talk about is that first responder law enforcement entrance that I was talking about. That actually is our back door, and that actually brings individuals to our facility from law enforcement, from EMS, from co-responder programs, from non-emergency ambulances to that back door. Our staff actually meet the individual at that back door. They ring a doorbell. We actually resume custody or take custody of that individual. We initiate treatment immediately. And then we actually take that individual into our care. We meet with them. We tell them we're meeting with them face to face. We're having conversations to say to that person, you're here, you're safe. And really it is a place where patients can come to us instead of being warded in an emergency room when they don't have a medical need. It's really truly a behavioral health need, or maybe they historically had been, placed incarcerated when they weren't necessarily doing anything criminal, but they were maybe held or whatnot for a few hours. We actually can take those individuals into our care and provide services and treatment and help. And it really is a way to divert those individuals to behavioral health, crisis support care and whatnot. Next slide. So these are some updates. So where are we at today? What are we focusing on and what are some of our key priorities today? So we continue to meet with King County to operationalize our contract and finalize the last kind of pieces of that. Progress has been made there and we're still on track. We are working with the licensing department on our necessary elements. So we've submitted all of our licensing requirements, recognizing that we had heard as we were meeting with various different stakeholders and other providers with similar experience that there could be some questions or challenges pertaining to the necessary licenses required to operate this particular model and the Connections model. So we have submitted our licensure and working with the appropriate regulatory bodies around any questions or concerns so that way it doesn't delay or stall our opening in July. We have secured our pharmacy vendor, so we will be working with Cardinal Health. They will have both pharmacy support remote as well as on-site. So we won't have a retail pharmacy, but we will have a pharmacist on-site to help provide oversight and pharmaceutical kind of interventions, if you will, and be a member of our team. As far as staffing goes, we have some updates in regards to this slide even. We have hired our community engagement liaison, that is Tasneem. I think she is actually participating and listening in to this call. We've actually hired our vice president for the market. So our key leader is hired on board, as well as our medical director. So those three key positions were what we had been open positions and what we've been sourcing for quite some time to really kind of establish their key leadership first. Those positions are filled, and we do have quite a bit of our floor staff positions hired as interviews are continuing to fill all roles: peers, techs, case managers, nurses, physicians, etc. So staffing is underway and happening as we speak. And then as far as community engagement, Heather Genovese, who is our National Vice President for Clinical Operations, and myself have spent close to a year now meeting with various different stakeholders in market, learning all of the ins and outs about what exists today, what are the resources that are already in place and established. And we just want to leverage those resources and leverage those services that are already in place by coming into market. What are the gaps that exist today? And by us coming and opening up our doors, we're filling those gaps. And so we've spent the last year really meeting with various different stakeholders and critical partners, just saturating the market with as much information about who we are and what services we will be providing as possible. And then recognizing, even with us opening up doors and the services that are already in place today, what are still some of our outstanding gaps, and what do we need to be aware of as we open up doors to ensure smooth handoffs and intersections between the various different stakeholders. We definitely don't think we are the solution. We think we are a solution. And so we want to enhance and add to the continuum of care and to the crisis continuum that exists today by the level of care and the services that we provide, and partnering with the hospitals and the other providers in the area to talk through those intersections and those handoffs to ensure smooth movement of patients through the continuum. We are actively participating in multiple work groups. So we recognize that there are work groups pertaining to identifying criteria around EMS protocol and criteria of transferring patients to crisis centers. We recognize that there is a large levy being passed around the crisis centers being built up and around the North King County area, the 5 centers. And so actively participating in all of those various different conversations. So that way we are a player at the table, and anything that we are putting in place, that we're thinking through ways to standardize the process for the up and other crisis centers that will be opening up the doors, but also involving all of the key players along the way to establish kind of protocols upon opening up our doors. And then continuing to meet with those stakeholders, from now until doors opening, around what those workflows look like and how do we navigate the handoffs accordingly and appropriately. Next slide. All right. So that was a very high level, kind of quick and dirty on who Connections is and when we're opening and who we're serving and what type of services we are providing. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you all may have.
Questions? Councilor Lutz?
First, I just want to start off by thanking you for all that you and your organization are doing. I think it's super exciting to have a dedicated behavioral health center up here in the north side, especially ahead of those 5 new centers. So just want to thank you and say that I'm very excited. And I don't know, maybe we'll have to put together a tour or something before it opens, but.
Yeah, actually, if let me just speak to that. I didn't mention that, and that's my apologies, but we will be having a ribbon cutting event. We will be having guided tours happening before doors actually open. And so happy to anyone who's interested in participating. We want to make sure that we include you. My contact information should be on perhaps the end of the slides, or I can absolutely send it through Stephanie, what have you. But we want to make sure that you all are getting the newsletter that goes out bi-monthly. And at this point, I believe it's going out monthly, that provides the updates regularly, and then as well as any information pertaining to the tours and the ribbon cutting, because we want to generate as much interest as possible and have all of you attend to that.
Thank you. No, that I think that would be really exciting to see the everything that's going on and the facilities. One question I did have is just, it has to do with those 5 new centers through that levy. And so how will this center complement or be different from those other centers that are coming about with the recent levy here in the north end?
So it will be very similar in the sense of the model looks pretty similar to what we will be providing. So as far as operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as far as having a open access or an open door model where someone can walk into the center, a designated entrance for law enforcement and first responder. Those are all things that are pretty key and critical to the levy kind of implementation team for their 5 centers that they've also been talking through and operating or thinking through operations. As far as difference goes, we will have an ENT unit, and I don't know that I've seen in their implementation plan that is a requirement of those 5 centers. So that is one kind of key difference to Connections and what we'll be offering. And then, I think that if there is an opportunity for us to potentially be one of those 5 centers, I know that they are going to procure through an RFP process. And if that's something that, that is open, then there may be some interest for us to kind of be one of those 5 centers. Similar to what Brooke had said, we had initiated being not attached to that levy only because it hadn't passed at the time, but the 5 cities were pretty innovative in thinking through, what level of care we needed to bring to the North King County area. And so these conversations happened prior to the levy being passed. And again, Kenmore being at the table to kind of being innovative outside of that levy. And so we had already started this process prior to that.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for all the work that you are all putting in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much for staying with us so late in the presentation. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to you opening and serving our residents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is our last presentation for the study session. 2023 Kenmore Police Services Report presented by Kenmore Police Chief Brandon Moen.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here. I will cover a few things, highlight a few issues, talk about some statistics that we've kind of picked out, but the more detailed statistics are in the police services report. It's available to the public. We post it online. Well, tomorrow we'll post the most recent one online, as well as this presentation, so anyone can go on there and view it. And I'll do a social media post to that effect as well. So tonight we're just talking about a few things. So we're remaining with our current staffing, which is myself and 12 patrol officers. We currently have 2 vacancies, all on patrol. Last year, we were fairly fortunate. We only had between 0 and 1, depending on the time of the year. Right now, we have 2 because attrition, things, people getting promoted, various things going on in life, moving away, leaving retirement, things of that sort. So there's a constant hole in the bottom of the bucket. And so it's no different in Kenmore as it is all the other police agencies, including the sheriff's office. So we're constantly dealing with those vacancies. We continue to rely heavily on Shoreline. I am the only supervisor in Kenmore, so in my absence, Shoreline is supervising the Kenmore officers. So we are very fortunate to have the relationship we do have with the city of Shoreline to utilize their police station their patrol sergeants, their command staff and whatnot. This is a slide you've probably seen before. It's essentially the same as it was, maybe slightly different. In terms of per capita staffing, we're among the lowest in the state. You can see our neighbors are there as well. So about half the state average for officers per 1,000 residents. Our staffing has remained largely the same since incorporation. We've added 1 FTE since incorporation. So we're proud of the work that we were able to do with the staffing that we have, and I think that's a reflection on the officers and the quality officers we are fortunate enough to have here. So we are currently 7th, though if you saw recent social media posts, we're up to 5th based on 2024 stats. So this is 7th because technically SafeWise's 2023 stats say that we're 7th. But we're back to 5th where we were in 2021, 2022. And so we're back to the 5th spot for this coming year. Just give it a summary of the kind of the bigger calls or more common calls we deal with. We're responding to about 3,400 calls for service. Those are actual 911 calls. We are relying more heavily on online reporting than we have in the past. So if it's a report that someone can file online, the 911 comm center will text that person a link to report it online. And so it doesn't tie up a police officer to go out to their house and actually take the report. It does, not all things qualify for that, it's just certain things. For instance, if someone wants to report an abandoned vehicle, they should do that online. They're not going to tie up a 911 call center receiver to take an abandoned vehicle report. They also do it through service requests on the city's website. So we do get a lot of those. Between online reporting and the service requests, they keep us pretty busy. And the rest of the stats there we'll generally talk about later. One other thing that I wanted to mention, our automated traffic enforcement stats not on there. Last year we approved around, or we reviewed around 10,000 violations with our automated enforcement program. We continue to be active on social media and community events through our weekend review. We do pretty consistently every week, every Monday, giving everyone a snapshot of what happened the previous week, the type of calls we're responding to, the number of calls. I get a lot of feedback from the community that's very positive about that. They like seeing what's happening and just the curiosity of what's happening in the area. We're also using social media for a lot of public education. As you can see in that center spot, talking about the bat lanes is something that we're having an issue with. And so I created a diagram or a graphic and trying to educate people on that topic. So really trying to be proactive about different community issues that are popping up. I see it here, but I don't trust it. I still want to go turn and look and make sure what I'm seeing here is up there. Number of emphasis projects we continue to work on. I just want to talk about Nurturing Trust, which is a series of workshops that we started last week, and actually the third one was tonight up at Inglemoor. So it's something that the police department is sponsoring in conjunction with the school district. It's geared towards particular Spanish-speaking families. I had an opportunity to meet with them last Monday at the first one, and there's a translator, and each night is a different topic geared towards, like I said, Spanish-speaking families and youth issues, whether it be gangs, drugs, domestic violence, positive parenting, different things that this consultant that we work with is able to teach these classes. And it's being very well received, and we're happy to have brought that back this year. Actually, have started it this year. We intended to do it, and then COVID hit, and it went away, unfortunately. So we're very happy to have it going. We're also supporting the DEIA strategic plan. We have a number of elements that we're working on to support the council and the city's goals in that respect. As you know, we did the gift cards for guns program last fall in conjunction with the sheriff's office. Shoreline and Kenmore hosted the event. King County entirely funded it. It was a very large operation, and it was amazing to see the amount of coordination and work it took. There was one in Burien and one on the north end, and we were fortunate to be involved in this one. And as you can see there, a lot of firearms are taken off the street, including 101 firearms and 8 rifles, 8 AR style rifles, which is pretty significant, and 6,000 rounds of ammunition. So the King County is, I've heard, considering funding more of these in the future. That it's not a small undertaking. It is rather expensive to do. It requires a lot of staff, a lot of follow-up on the back end with all these firearms. So it is expensive, but my understanding is they're gonna more of those in the future. Body worn cameras. So as of March 1st, we all have them, including I have one here. It's not recording right now, but it is on me. It's all on the Axon platform, which is very common in law enforcement around the country. It's definitely the most popular platform. They are, as you can see in that video, HD, very clear, multiple microphones. I've been really impressed with the quality of information it's able to capture. It will live transcribe. Once we download the video, it'll transcribe what's being said. It's really amazing technology, and we're very fortunate to have it. The Sheriff's Office is handling all the public disclosure requests, as they do for all police records. And that ends up being the most expensive thing. And these are expensive pieces of equipment, but it's that work on the back end with the public disclosure requests and redactions. It is incredibly time consuming. And the Sheriff's Office has hired quite a bit of staff to handle that. And so we are paying our fair share of that program. And that's a large portion of it is for those public disclosure requests. Eventually, all the vehicles will have in-car video as well, just for cost savings. Those are getting put in as vehicles are replaced. So we have a few, but those will eventually, everybody will have those in their vehicles. National Night Out, August 7th, in conjunction with the Farmers Market. So just like last year, we had a great turnout the last couple years, joining it with the Farmers Market. So we'll be there again, first Wednesday of August. So getting into a few crime stats, this is the kind of the odd one in that this is based on 2022 crime stats, because in order to compare ourselves to our neighbors, we have to rely on the previous year's report of from the Washington Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs. And that's why this data is a little bit older, but consistent with previous years, we remain lower than our neighbors in per capita, per 1,000 residents crimes, at least the offenses, which are the ones that are mattering the most. And
Finish your thought.
I was going to go to the next slide, so go right ahead.
Well, I mean, look at the big difference there. That's not just like a marginal difference. Those are big numbers that were lower than our neighboring cities. Chief, any theories on why that's such a big difference?
Well, I'd like to take just credit for our officers' work and making that happen, but I think in reality, a lot of it is just the nature of our community here, and we're very high in residential population and not as high in commercial as some other cities. So say Woodinville's the polar opposite, a lot of commercial, not a lot of residential, so their crime is going to be higher. So that does make us look a little bit better, to be perfectly honest, if I'm being transparent. But that said, we have made a lot of strides in making this.
Yeah, that explains most of the cities up there, but Lake Forest Park is also residential and doesn't have a ton of commercial. Thoughts on that particular one, or?
I would have to explore their stats a little more in depth to understand exactly what crimes they're seeing, but might be a byproduct of just the type of businesses they have in relation to the community. And but I honestly don't have a great answer. So I'll dive into those stats a little bit more.
And I just noticed you saw a slide earlier about police officers per capita. We're the lowest, but we're also low on crime. So there isn't a correlation between more cops, less crime.
Yes and no. I mean, I agree. Yes, on paper, yes. I would say in certain circumstances, certain cities, that's not necessarily the case. But in here, yes, I'd agree. Same stats, 2022, just looking at the broader county, we're still very high up on there in terms of crime per 1,000 residents. Person's peeking in the window. Notable investigations. We had several fairly high-profile felony assault arrests we made, a bank robbery arrest, an armed robbery arrest, just kind of one-offs that happened throughout the year that we're very fortunate to have made arrests on. When crime does happen, we are happy that we're able to hold people accountable and know that Kenmore is somewhere where crimes will be investigated and prosecuted. And do have these higher profile incidents. We're proud that we have great officers here, as well as the support of the King County Sheriff's Office and their excellent detectives who help us make arrests in a lot of these incidents. And occasionally we rescue ducks out of storm drains. Our dispatch calls for service actually last year were remarkably similar, within 2, oddly enough, of the previous year. Down slightly from pre-COVID. Some of that is again, the diversion to online reporting and other methods, but very similar. Response times have remained roughly the same. These numbers I always take with a grain of salt because it doesn't take much for a number to get skewed. If for some reason on a certain night, a call had to hold. So I take it with a grain of salt, but these numbers are fairly steady given past years. And if we look at the city as a whole, we break it down into 5 patrol districts, and that's how the crime stats are assigned when a crime occurs or a call occurs. These are just the dispatch calls as a whole. What we call the Edward 2, upper right-hand corner there, that's the biggest call generator, primarily byproduct of the commercial areas in the north side of Bothell Way that fall within that district. On view, similar to dispatch calls or service, these are traffic stops, area checks, business checks, things of that sort. Officers are going out and doing things proactively and very similar to previous years. Crimes against persons, crimes against property. So the crime statistics are divided into 3 groups. In addition to those 2, crimes against society as well, which is far less common. But these 2 are kind of the generic ones in which these crimes are lumped. And as you can see, they're very, very similar to last year. And similar story there, domestic violence. We're in 2019, there were 63. These are actual arrest cases. These aren't investigations. These are an arrest was made for some form of domestic violence. Much lower than we were in 2019. And this stat is really amazing to me, how much it's gone down from 2016, where was it? 102. So we're half essentially of what it was in 2016. And that's a byproduct of the people that have these rings that will come in and operate in an area and commit a bunch of burglaries. And that my hunch is that some of that spike was rings operating in the region, but very fortunate to see very few burglaries, or far less burglaries than we have in the past. Now, on the other side of things, motor vehicle thefts. This has been a statewide issue that's gotten a lot of press. We have not been immune to it here. In fact, it's kind of leveled out here in early 2024 statewide, but in Kenmore, we're continuing to go up a bit. There was an 88% spike statewide between 2021 and 2022. So the spike you see there, it started in 21 and went onward, was similar to what the state was seeing. And to anticipate a question that may come up later, it's a wide variety of vehicles. Actually went back and looked at those 53 vehicle thefts, and they're all over the board. About 25% were either a Hyundai or a Kia, which have gotten a lot of notoriety here recently with the vehicle theft. So about a quarter of those involve either of those 2 brands. What was interesting is about 17% of them, actually, of that 53 were U-Hauls. We do have a lot of U-Hauls here. Main U-Haul hub and 2 businesses that operate with U-Hauls. So that is another thing that's driving up these numbers. So I always like to give a little more detail about traffic collisions. That's something that I know is a priority and that we look at very closely. They're starting to go up. and get to pre-COVID like numbers, very similar numbers. They're up about 13% from last year. This is not abnormal for the region. Now, I know based on personal experience in reading the report that Shoreline saw a 65% increase last year in traffic collisions. So our 13% is looking pretty good, but a 65% jump is quite the spike. So where are the collisions happening? Primarily, as you'd imagine, along the high traffic roadways. There were 13 bicyclists and what I'm calling other collisions. It could be some type of pedal cyclist. It could be something with wheels. Those include, as you see there, the last bullet of that section, electric bikes, scooters, skateboard, something that's not necessarily bicycle, but 13 bicycle and other collisions. What's interesting of those is that, as you can see there, only about half actually involved a vehicle. And 11 of the 13, they were in some type of, not necessarily in the vehicular portion of the roadway, but in a bike lane, a trail, sidewalk, or parking lot. So this is, again, using a very broad definition. If someone's on a skateboard and crashes on a sidewalk and they get injured, that is technically a traffic collision, and we reported this as a statistic. The 4 pedestrian collisions, again, 2 of the 4 actually involved in some type of public road. One of them was in a gas area oil change place where there was an incident with an employee, an accident that happened. But technically a vehicle pedestrian collision, but certainly not your traditional one. And we had a pedestrian walking a dog collide with a bike. Again, not your typical pedestrian collision, but we did have 4 of them. We did not have any MAR callouts, which we have not had this year either. MAR callouts being the major accident reconstruction unit that will come out and investigate a really highly either fatal or serious injury collision. And we're fortunate not to have any of those in 2023 in which they responded. As you can see there, that's that spike of 13, though I think I prefaced it enough with that includes other things that are non-traditional, but technically that is correct. Our pedestrian collisions were cut in half, though. Actually, the next slide goes in a little more detail about just where they are. Where are the bike and ped collisions? So the orange signs being bicycle or others, and the yellow being pedestrian collisions. The red circles are probably the more interesting ones, and that those are the ones where the actual vehicle was involved. So that's where a bicycle was, bicycle or pedestrian or a scooter collided with a vehicle. So as you can see there, along 68th and Juanita in particular. But these are just a few summaries rather than going over all these stats. This is just a summary of kind of the ups and downs. Motor vehicle thefts and fraud, collisions up, burglaries, car prowls actually slightly down, marginal decrease, but a decrease nonetheless. Again, I'd refer you to the PSR for any more details about specific crimes or more details about these. And as part of the mayor's pledge that we started in 2020 or 2021, I report every year on any uses of force that occurred. And use of force is very broad in that it's any arrest or contact with the police that results in any amount of injury, a complaint of pain. It could be a scrape, it could be just my arm hurts, or it could be a tasing, strike, whatever it may be. All of those are uses of force. So last year, despite all of arrests, the only one was one taser application that was found to be within policy in July of 2023. So obviously a small fraction of the that we respond to or dealt with actually result in any type of use of force. And with that, in record time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions? Councilor Orlizes.
Thank you very much for this extensive report and for all that you and the other officers do in protecting Kenmore residents. I did have one quick question, and that's about automotive theft, since there is sort of a spike there. And I'm just curious, is there anything that's changed internally in terms of emphasis or trying to combat that, or are we still waiting for numbers to sort of flatten out in addressing that?
So I'd say a lot of it is, there are issues that are outside of our control here locally. There are regional issues that, like a lot of regional issues that they find them ending up in Kenmore as well. So I'd say that given the spike that we saw statewide, it certainly points to the fact that there are other larger issues beyond what I could do here. There are a lot of crimes where we can do an emphasis and go out and try to deal with DUIs or shoplifts at Safeway or things of that sort, where we can apply labor to try to address. Vehicle theft is kind of a hard one to do. There are some emphasis things we can try to address in terms of crime prevention and encouraging people not to leave their vehicles unlocked and the obvious things, but vehicle theft's a little bit more challenging for us to address on a local. That said, we do have I have a plan that I'll be pitching at some point here in the coming year for I almost spoil it, but we'll I'll be making a pitch later this year with city staff about an issue that or a program that will assist us in this type of crime as well as several others.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, thank you for answering my question. Now with, say, catalytic converters, since that was a big thing a couple of years ago, how is that factored in? Where does that fall? And is that something that's sort of gone down in the last year or two?
So that would be categorized as a theft within our stats. I would just say anecdotally, far less than it was a couple years ago. We did have a rash of them 2021. During COVID, it seemed to be a thing. It really hitting hard. I don't remember off the top of my head the last time we had a catalytic converter theft here. It was probably the middle of last year, and it was fairly isolated. So they do still happen here, and I'm not jinxing it, but it's been a while since we've really seen that issue pop up.
Very much. I appreciate your answers there. And is there anything we as a council can support our police department with when it comes to?
So, yeah, certainly continuing to support Racer. We really appreciate, and the officers appreciate the investment that this council has made in Racer. Brooke's not here, but she'll be watching this later. Us having Brooke has been a real blessing. She's just been a tremendous asset for that program and really brought it to the next level. And with the investment that the council has put and all these cities have put into that program, it's just amazing where it's gone. And so we're seeing it on a daily basis, as we saw in our lobby during the meeting, literally in our lobby, we're able to intervene and help people. But even in the more traditional sense of the dispatch calls we see, the officers are regularly calling. Hey, is there a crisis responder available to go with us? This is someone we've dealt with regularly. We're not making any headway. They either tried to follow up in the past, but they're having an issue right now. We would like them to go with us and try to talk to this person. That's where the relationship they're building with Melissa and John in particular, the two crisis responders that we work with most closely. They're building those relationships so that they're routinely calling for them now. And so it's a great resource that we have. And just to reiterate what Brooke said, is that we're definitely ahead of the curve. When we started Radar in 2011 or so in Shoreline, it was cutting edge then, and it just where it's progressed into Racer, it's amazing how far it's grown, and we're very fortunate that you all have supported it. So thank you
very much.
Deputy Mayor.
I've got a question and a comment. I think I might have two comments, but not going to lead this, but I will lead this question. Number one, it's so great to see we're number 5 for safety in the state of Washington. That's wonderful. And my question though is, staffing wise, we're going, it's budget year, all, as we're looking at things, do you feel resourced enough with staff?
So there could be more. I would never honestly be able to say that we couldn't use more staff, because we could always use more administrative support, things of that sort. At this point, the challenge is finding people to fill those positions, because even like right now, we have our 2 vacancies that the vacancies throughout the sheriff's office are broken up to within each contract city and unincorporated area so that we all have our fair share. So there's a total amount of vacancies for the sheriff's office, and then our fair share is currently 2. So we're required to carry those 2 as our fair share. Now we being the sheriff's office are diligently recruiting and hiring and making huge incentives to get people through the academy and quality people, and trying to reduce that number. So we were not going to be at 2 for very long. In fact, I hope by the end of the year we'll be back to 1. But it's difficult to ask for more staffing when I can't fill the spots I have. So I love more, but it wouldn't do me much good unless we start hiring more.
Well, I don't think we have a lot of money to put towards it, but I was curious.
Yeah.
And I'm really impressed with, I think our council and city are thankful for your leadership and success for our city. You're doing great work with a minimal staff, and it's proven with the results that you've been sharing with us today. And I actually, what I liked too, I have to say this, because Nathan asked the question, what can we do for you? Your response is, let's keep supporting Racer. This is something that's really helping our service to our community. And, that's beautiful. That was a response that felt really good to me. You were like, we need more of we just want more of this special resource that, we've been involved in for quite a while, but I want to thank you for that. The other question that I had, or not question, but I just want to say one of the things I loved about this presentation was the community outreach that you and your team are performing. The events at Inglemoor High School in particular, saving ducks in the gutter during a ribbon cutting. I mean, it's pretty cool. But there's just something really heartwarming about the things that you chose to share. And I want to thank you for your leadership and service for our city.
Councilor Marshall.
You need not respond if I'm going to hit too close to the mark, but I couldn't help myself. If I read recently about, in relation to the auto theft, like those anti-theft devices being handed out by King County or some other jurisdiction, they're handing them out to people. Maybe that's something to consider in light of what you're considering with the auto theft fight. You don't need to respond. Cool, thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
I missed one thing. I also wanted to thank you for your work on the gun buyback. That was really great that, your support with our city manager and staff, of course, and our council's desire to participate. All of us work together and we're able to very timely get involved with that program. It was great for us to be upfront. And I hope that we're able to do more, but I know that other cities probably want to have their opportunities as well. But it was great for our city to be upfront and one of the first cities to do that. So thank you.
Just one quick question. How much of your officers' time is taken up just transporting folks to and from SCORE? I mean, that's one of the concerns I've had for a while is since we lost our contract with Snohomish County probably a decade ago at this point, or almost a decade ago, we've been using SCORE, which is down in Des Moines, is it?
Yep.
Is that, I'm just curious like how that impacts your work.
It's not as much as an impact as you'd think. We have less bookings now than we haven't had in the past for a variety of reasons. So they're not making that trip as often. There are a few things that also offset that time, in that we used to have to transport people from SCORE to the Shoreline District Court for appearances. And I just caught a portion of the presentation, but they're continuing to use Zoom for a lot of those, which has been wonderful for us because that prevents that. So we aren't constantly driving people up for a 10-minute hearing and then driving them all the way back. And I'd say that was more tedious and and time consuming for us than actually driving someone that we're freshly booking on a new arrest down there. So if the court continues doing that, I will be incredibly happy.
Glad to hear it. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yep.
Really appreciate everything you
My
do.
pleasure.
And with that, staff reports.
Yeah, just a couple things. I just want to thank Stephanie and the folks in the city manager's office for bringing this all together tonight. Stephanie is in charge of public safety, as you know, and that's a really good decision to put her in charge of that because she's, as you can tell, she's kind of brought it to a whole new level, and especially with the care and attention that she's been able to give justice services and support services and things like that. So she's been on the team to help grow Racer and also to help with the crisis response center that's opening in July, as you heard tonight. So that's been great. And I also want to thank our chief of police and his police officers, just an outstanding group of Kenmore's finest. And Chief has been with us for 5 years now. Yeah. And that went fast. I guess maybe the pandemic made it go fast or something. I don't know, but just really high caliber of police officers. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that we contract with King County for police services. I truly believe you get high quality police officers through a larger agency like that. So I'm just really pleased with how things are going with our public safety, and just really grateful. So we have a retreat this Friday, Saturday. Note the start time on Friday. It's 10:30 a.m. We thought, get there by 10, get kind of situated, and then we'll be off and running at 10:30. And your 3-ring binders are in your boxes, so please pick those up tonight before you leave. And that is all I have.
All right, council member reports and comments. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Ms. Lukash, for a brilliant presentation. I just remember when it first started and I was so overjoyed. It's my day job, so I'm involved in all this, but look at all the societal issues that all of us and our constituents encounter and that we're affecting. It's so important. So thank you. It's an awesome presentation. Thank you.
Councilmember Sassen.
Oh gosh, a couple things. I feel like I've spent my day today hearing professionals in and around our community talk about the excellence of our city managers and staff. And it's just been incredibly rewarding to hear people reflect on the vision that you held. So thank you for that. Regarding this presentation, the Mayor's Pledge was, I think, my first interaction with City Council back in 2021. And it was just delightful to me to see it up there. Like, oh yeah, that happened. And then as part of Affordable Housing Week in May, there will be 2 things are happening regarding housing and homelessness, because our staff, Garrett Oppenheim and Tammy Cork, really ran with the message we put to them in January, which was we need education. We need to educate our community. And so to that end, working with NUSA and the North King County Housing and Homelessness, there will be a proclamation. The glossary of terms is in near final stages, and they're going to be working on distribution. But most interestingly, on Tuesday, May 14th, during the lunch hour, there's going to be a virtual lunch and learn. So I'm really hoping that people will put that on their calendar. You'll see it advertised, but an hour-long presentation in order to really bring us all to a common ground with vocabulary and concepts as we re-enter the conversation about permanent supportive housing and housing options in the near future. So thank you.
Councilmember Shevnik.
Nothing to add other than thank you to Stephanie for a great set of presentations and all the presenters.
Councilmember Lutz.
Yes, I have a couple of things really quickly. First of all, I did want to start by thanking our wonderful city staff, especially Deputy City Manager Lukash and Garrett Oppenheim for all their work putting this together. Special thank you to all of our esteemed guests this evening. I cannot imagine it was an easy feat to bring all of these folks with very busy lives under one roof for one evening. So I'm very grateful for that. And special thank you to our police chief and all of the Kenmore Police Department for all the work that they do in our community. I also wanted to quickly recognize our city clerk, Mrs. Anastasia Warhol, for her recent receival of her Master Municipal Clerk certificate. And so I think that's a super cool thing, and I'm very proud that she's on our staff and for continuing her education in this way, and all the more developing the skills that she can offer our city. Also, I know that they said during the Where's the Fun? There's a presentation about Seatown Suites. I also got the chance to go this weekend on opening day, and they had some great little treats there. So that was a lot of fun. A couple of things in terms of regional committees. Just as a reminder to folks that this weekend, April 27th, is the ribbon cutting and opening of the East Link connection between Bellevue and Redmond. There will be a ribbon cutting at the Bellevue station, but events at all 8 of the stations on the east side. There will be live music, kids activities, a light rail shaped bouncy house, cultural events, farmers market. There's a farmers market at the Spring District station. All youth under 18 ride for free. And if you're not under 18, you may want to consider purchasing a day pass. Their Metro will also be providing a shuttle from the South Bellevue Park and Ride to the downtown station starting at 8:30 a.m. so that everyone can participate. And then in terms of the One Line, which goes north to south through Seattle, the next leg of that will be opening this summer, August 30th, going from Northgate to Linwood, which is an additional 4 stations. And that's all I have to add.
Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to join my colleagues and our city manager in commending Stephanie Lukash, our deputy city manager, for her leadership of our public safety in this presentation. And Garrett Oppenheim, thank you again for all of your excellent work. I want to thank our chief of police for making a 30-slide presentation so go by so quickly. I was a little scared. Thank you. But I also, and also city manager, there's a team that's really working together for this city. And, we've heard other people on the dais say it, but the people working with our city say how great it is to work with our city. And as a council, we couldn't be happier than to hear that. So thank you for that outstanding work. I'm going to swerve sharply and just say Happy Earth Day, everybody. And I'm thankful to work with this council and this city and to be making such good headway for our environment and to be in a city with multiple Earth Day events that our community members were able to participate in, that our staff provide support to community organizations and groups that create projects for our community to participate in. I'm so thankful for that. So let's just keep on doing this great work. We have a wonderful planet to live on, people to build community and support with. So thank you. That's it.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add. Everybody's already been thanked thoroughly, but again, thank you, everyone. And it is actually really, having this presentation the way that it's been put together the last couple of years is super enlightening, because you get to see all the interconnectedness between a lot of the work that we're doing and the positive outcomes that we're getting from a lot of that work. And that's really satisfying to see. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you all on Friday. Remember, nobody's expected to be in suits at the retreat. Dress for comfort and read your materials, and I'll see you all on Friday. With that, we are adjourned.